And we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show for today's 220-1002 A+ study group. It's the Core 2 study group. I've got an hour of Q&A in this first hour, and then we'll have an hour of non-Q&A. I guess the Q&A shifts. It'll be me asking you questions in the first hour, and then you ask me questions in the second hour. See how that works? All right. We've got everything ready to go here, I think. Let's find out. We've got our OBS running up here. We've got no presentation on the screen. There it is. Presentations on the screen there. We've got recordings going down here. See, my Cylons are going. This is good. Hi, chat room. Hi, everybody. Let's pop out the chat so I could see it. There it is. Not that I couldn't see it before, but there we go. Now we can really see the chat. It works. It's alive. We've got Core 2 stuff today. It's all 220-1002. We just did this, didn't we? We just did this on Tuesday, 2 days ago. This is one of those weeks where I get to do 2 live streams instead of 1 live stream. So it's nice to be back in the chair doing this. Not that I'm not in the chair all the time. I am in the chair. But you get to see me, which is the difference. Because this is where it happens. Everything happens right here. This is a little bit different than it is when you are not watching this. Normally, these screens that are back here, the 2 large monitors, are on monitor arms. And I usually swing those a little closer to me when we're not live. That's not on over there because we're not streaming. The mixer's pushed back a little bit because I never have to touch it. But pretty much everything else is the same. So I'll just sit here and... well, right now we're making content. That's all I do is make content. So make more content as we're getting through there. This setup has sort of evolved through the years, although it is not much has changed with this. The mixer is the same mixer I've had for a very long time. The video switcher is only a year old. That's because we shifted everything over to 4K and we needed a 4K switcher. Everything else is pretty much the same. You know, the type of computer that's in front of me changes over time just because it gets old and needs to be updated. I could not use my old computer for editing 4K video. I needed a newer. You always need newer. You always need faster. So I had to do that. So that's what's going on here. But if I was to get a new one, I'd probably just get the same thing except newer. I know that Apple just released or just updated. In fact, this is in front of me is an iMac Pro. They just updated their iMac Pro internals. So now they're faster. Well, of course, now that makes me sad. Now I want the faster one, but I just don't want to pay for the faster one. This one edits fine. It vendors fine. It does all fine. The latency is low for this. The latency is not just low. The latency settings are set to ultra low is what they are set to. Just so you are, not that that matters for any of us, but that's what that is. It's set to ultra low because we're doing interactive to be able to do this. Now they updated the internals of the iMac Pro as well. So some of the iMac Pro stuff was updated. But they didn't really promote that because it was just minor changes. But they did update some of it. And of course, they did release new versions of the iMac. That's a different animal completely. I don't want an iMac. I need the iMac Pro because it has Pro in the name. What's the difference? I have no idea. No, I do not. I know what the difference is. I'm just trying to get through the first 10 minutes. I have all those things there. We have plenty to go through. I've got 5 minutes before we go live. This is not the live stream. For those of you joining us, welcome. We start the live stream in about 5 minutes. There's my 5-minute warning. You get to see me. This is what you see during the live stream. So there's more stuff going on in front. You see the front of me for the live stream. So this is just me trying to make sure I have everything ready to go, so that we can chat with the kind of casually with the chat room and answer any non-specific questions you might have. Yeah, so I spec'd out a new iMac Pro as if I was going to buy one and realized, wow, those are really expensive. I should probably consider something else. But I've got a lot of different things going here. The streaming box here has got, I think, a TI 1080 in it, and it's a perfectly reasoned, it's a last generation motherboard, so it's relatively new. It's doing fine. It uses, what's its CPU percentage at right now? I can't read it because it's so small, but it's at 14%. So it's fine. And I don't stream at 4K. I stream at 1080p because the 4K is so much latency. You're about 20 to 30 seconds behind to be able to do that. So that doesn't work so much for what we're doing. We need fast. What you're seeing here is showing up about 5 seconds after I say it. So you're getting a very fast turnaround. There's practically no delay that's significant that we have to deal with. And because I'm asking questions and asking you to answer the questions, it is not giving me, I need to send them a note. It's not giving me percentages today. I have to keep refreshing. I'm going to have to keep doing that. That's disappointing. I'd make that happen. But it has to be so quick because I'm asking the question, and then if you didn't hear the question until 30 seconds after I said it, that means I would at least take that long to see the very first responses come back, which means probably another 30 seconds to a minute to finally get a decent number of responses. So it just adds so much time to the question process. So the ultra low latency allows me to ask the question, you see it in 5 seconds, and we're immediately getting feedback. That's the benefit. I guess we could turn this on, turn that down. You know what I don't have? Yeah, I do. That's ready to go here. Oh, I think we're in pretty good shape. So our CompTIA certification similar to the Cisco DevNet cert? Thankfully, no. The whole idea behind DevNet is questionable to begin with. It's kind of an odd thing the industry is doing. Is it suddenly taking things that we've done forever and kind of naming it something new and trying to force people to wrap a new kind of position around it? I get it on the cloud side. Certainly there are things on the cloud side that need more of a developer focus. That's probably the thing I hate about it. It's not a developer. You're not a developer. You're not creating an application. You're not building out a mobile app. You're not building something and supporting it over a long period of time. You're not working with object-oriented programming languages, and that's all you do is development. That is a science unto itself. It's almost like saying, why is my heart surgeon not familiar with how to put together a carburetor? Well, carburetor, you take it apart and you clean it and you put it back together. Hearts are about the same thing, so we'll put that together. We need a heart surgeon carburetor repair person. Like that doesn't, what? Why are you sticking those together? Well, because we have a car and we have a heart, so it makes sense that that person would do that. Yeah, but you could spend your entire career learning the intricacies of how to properly repair a car. You spend your entire career learning how to properly repair a heart. Why are you, now you're getting somebody who doesn't do either of those very well, or maybe does only one of them well, and not, you can't have somebody that does both of them well, I guess is my point. So automation is one thing, development is something completely different. And I don't know that it's got the legs to kind of keep going. I think we should keep trying. I think we should find the right balance. I think there is a balance. We've always had the balance. It's always existed. We've always done automation. We've always done, found ways to make things happen automatically. That's nothing new. It's been in our industry forever. Now we're suddenly deciding, oh, it's a brand new technology and we need people to be developed. No, you don't. You do not want people to be developers. Trust me. Let's keep the developers over there developing because they have to be very good at doing that. And then let's keep our other IT people over here doing that because they can spend their entire career doing that. So there's my sermon for today. I think it's 12 o'clock. It's time to maybe not start being the old angry guy for a while, and let's do a study group. How about that? Would that be a good idea? I think it would. Let's get some things started here. Let's click a few buttons and let's get this going. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2020 Professor Messer 220 1002 A+ study group. This is our Core 2 A+ study group. For those of you not familiar with the nomenclature that CompTIA uses, their 220-1001 exam is the Core 1. The 220-1002 is the Core 2. So all of the questions that I will be asking you in this first hour of the study group are all coming directly from the 220-1002 exam objectives. So here you go. That's a big one. Did it say July? See, that's what I do, is I don't update things properly on here. I probably need to get different views of that to be able to do it. Did I put the wrong graphic on earlier? Which one did this say? No, it says August. I think we're in pretty good shape there. I didn't forget that one. I probably messed the one up on the YouTube, didn't I? That's okay. There's worse things to worry about. It does say July on the YouTube, but that's all right. Today we're going to talk to you about, here we go. Let's get the slideware going here, because I have a question for you. And the only way that you're going to be able to answer these questions is if you know how. So here is the best way to do this, is to go to the professormesser.com/QA link. That is the perfect way to make this happen. That is going to take you to a question that is waiting for you right now. So go to that link, professormesser.com/QA, pop up a new browser window and go right to it. You can also find that there is an app you can use. Go to your favorite app store and you can download the Socrative student app. That's listed right there. Make sure you get the right app. There is a Socrative student app and a Socrative teacher app, and you don't want to be the person who has the wrong app. You need the student app. So make sure you have that as well. There's a number of things that we're going to work through as we go through this. So if you get the app and you install it, it will ask you for a room name. Make sure you have the room name listed there. The room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. So a couple of different things that you could do to get that going. That should help you out. In the meantime, the YouTube side is fixed for all those folks that were so very much concerned about YouTube maybe not being quite what they were hoping for. Now things look bright on the YouTube side. You should feel a lot better about that. So now it says August. Now I have a question for you. If you were able to go to those links where it says professormesser.com/QA, there is a question waiting for you there from yesterday that I put in. It was actually when I grabbed from last month's. We always do a month earlier study group question. So as I was piecing these together, I grabbed an old one, stuck it in here when I was putting all of this together. And now we have one from yesterday, the one from last month that I created and stuck in here yesterday that says, which of the following would be the best way to securely manage the console of a Linux server across the network? And you have a number of options available. You have VNC, Telnet, RDP, SNMP, and SSH. So which of the following would be the best way to securely manage the console of a Linux server across the network? Is that VNC, Telnet, RDP, SNMP, and SSH? We'll come back to that answer in just a moment. Stand by for the answer on that one. Thanks for joining us. We've got so many things that are going on this side. If you ever want to see what the latest things are that we are doing, gosh, just in the last couple of weeks, we've created videos about the latest Security Plus that's coming out. I've created a video on how you can get a job in IT with no experience. There's all kinds of things that we're putting out on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe at professormesser.com/YouTube. There are also the Instagram settings. Make sure you go Instagram-wise to have a look at these as well. We've got plenty of questions. Every day I have a question on Instagram that shows you those things, so make sure you go out and have a look at that. And we put those on Twitter as well. You can also subscribe to those on our website. Feel free to go out, have a look at those as well. Plenty to go through. Another great way to support us is on Amazon. If you're someone who purchases things on Amazon, one of the things that you can do is go out to the Amazon link on our website at professormesser.com/Amazon. And you can, of course, go right there and find out exactly what is available. You'll see the link there to click the Amazon link to start shopping. You pay the same low price on Amazon, but they give us a little bit of a commission that helps keeps the lights on. It's a great way to support us without even spending any money out of your pocket. I guess any additional money out of your pocket to be able to do that. We've got all the questions today coming from the A-plus exam, the 220-1002. This was an exam that was released in January 15, 2019. So it's been out about a year and a half now. This exam will probably retire somewhere around July 2022. I know it's a long way away, and that is the point at this video, is if you're watching this live in August of 2020, you have plenty of time before this exam ever goes away. Keep studying, keep working towards this exam. This is the latest one. You need to get a 700 on the 220-1002 on a scale from 100 to 900. And one thing to keep in mind is that on the 220-1002, over 20% of the topics are new. So don't use older materials to study for the 220-1002. All of our questions today will come from the Core 2 exam objectives, which include operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So we're going to go through each one, and I will, of course, show you all of those details as we go through this. You'll know exactly where those things came from. There is also, for those of you not familiar with our free videos, every single minute of every single training video we make is available on our YouTube channel or from our website. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com. Their index is available, indices that you can flip through and see all of the different videos in order. I also have course notes, my exam hacks ebook. I take all these videos and put them in audio form. I create downloadable versions of these videos that you can purchase individually, or you can just purchase everything all together as my success bundle. It includes all of these materials and more, including priority Q&A access to this study group and plenty of other things as well. You can find out about that at ProfessorMesser.com/1002success, 1002success. There are also some free questions on the website. Our Take 10 challenge questions are out there for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. These 10 question summaries that we've archived from our study groups, you can take in a test-taking front end in your browser and see how you do. Plenty of questions to go through, especially for the 1001 and 1002 A+, and we're adding new ones all the time. If you'd like an audio version of this to listen to later, there's a podcast form available. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/podcast and either add the stream link to the podcast program that you use, or you can just stream it from there and listen on that page at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Also, my marketing manager, Lori, goes through this live stream about a day after and puts timestamps into YouTube. In fact, if you go look at an old version and YouTube has updated your player, then you'll notice that there are even links within the play bar that show you where the different questions and answers are, or you can simply click the link in the YouTube video description. Lori goes through this entire thing. She has to watch it. Hi, Lori. Chat room, you can tell Lori. Lori, hi. She's watching the chat as it goes by because the chat's on our replay as well. She sees all of this, and she is the one having to listen to this whole thing and put it all together so that she is able to have these, so that all of us are able to have these timestamps, which I find to be incredibly valuable. Let's also have a look at the question we asked earlier. Which of the following would be the best way to securely manage the console of a Linux server across the network? And I gave you a number of options. One was VNC, Telnet, RDP, SNMP, and SSH. And you can see from our list, 72% of you said SSH. SSH, of course, is Secure Shell. That is a console front end that you're able to use across the network. And one of the significant advantages of using SSH, of course, is the secure part. All of the communication's encrypted. So never use communication across the network that is not encrypted, especially with something like a console. Instead of using Telnet, which is not encrypted and runs over TCP port 23, use SSH, which is absolutely encrypted and runs over TCP port 22. That would be the right answer. Those of you that were here last month probably remember that. It would not be SNMP. SNMP is a way to gather statistics or metrics from a device. There is no console. You don't log in with SNMP. It's simply a protocol that queries an SNMP service running on a third-party device, and that service responds back with the statistics that you've asked about. It would not be VNC or RDP, which are both remote desktop type control programs to be able to use. Those are Very different than a console-based front end that you would use on something like a Linux server. That's sending the entire screen, all of the graphical displays that are there. Both VNC and RDP would not be the best way to securely manage the console. Are they ways to manage the console? Yes, you could remote desktop in or VNC in and then launch the terminal from the desktop and manage the device at the command line. But what you're now spending a lot of bandwidth and a lot of time doing something that you could do very quickly with very little bandwidth by using SSH. And the last one was Telnet, and we already talked about why Telnet's not a good idea. So I think you guys did really good with that. Now you're in. You can absolutely go into this this Q&A. You're answering the questions. We're in very good shape, so now we can continue through. And yes, VNC and RDP are very often encrypted by default. There are ways to run it without encryption, but you'll find if you're running RDP or VNC, most of those are pretty secure in how they operate. Now for some new questions. Time to get some brand new 221,002 questions. Before we start these questions, I want to tell you that the very first new question of the month is always a performance-based question. Some of you have never taken a CompTIA exam, may not be aware of this. There are a handful of questions you get at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice. They are questions that are anything but multiple choice, if you will. They are drag and drop. They're questions that ask you to fill in and configure a device. It might have a question of matching different things together or putting things in a particular order. All of those things are important. They are asking you the same information that you have to know from the exam objectives. They're just asking it of you in a different way. So we have a performance-based question for you, and we're going to do it right now. It's a matching question that asks, match the utility to the description. I have 4 utilities here on the screen, and I want you to match it to the descriptions. One of the things you'll notice is there are more descriptions than there are utilities. So there will be some descriptions that will not be answered or used in this particular question. So for those of you listening in, the match the utility to the description, the 4 utilities are CD, disk part, task kill, and GP update. So those are the 4 utilities you need to match: CD, disk part, task kill, and GP update. The 7 different descriptions, and again, this is a 1-to-1, so you're only going to choose 4 of these. Description A is prepare a drive before storing files. Description B is terminate an active process. Description C is list all files on a drive. Description D is update the drivers on a Windows image. Description E is manage an Active Directory computers, or manage Active Directory computers. Description F is move to a different working directory. And G is manage the configuration of a volume. Those are the 7 different descriptions. And as I mentioned, it's a 1-to-1. So some of these will be left over at the end of this. So keep that in mind as well. Not something we want to have to worry about when we're done with all of these. So see if you can go through this entire list and know exactly what to do. So we've got CD, disk part, task kill, and GP update. If you think they are all in order now, you can simply answer as 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D, and you're it. So there'll be 3 of these that are left over at the end. So don't worry about that. In fact, that's kind of a common theme on the exam, is that very often on some of these matching questions on the exam, they don't give you 1-to-1 questions. They are almost always questions with things left over. And I just didn't have enough room on the screen to tell you that some of these descriptions will not be used, but some of these descriptions will not be used, just so you're aware to have some of those. CD, disk part, task kill, and GP update. Is it prepare a drive before storing files, terminate an active process, list all files on the drive, update the drivers on a Windows image, manage Active Directory computers, move to a different working directory, and manage the configuration of a volume? Link all of those things up, and you'll know exactly what they are. We'll step through each of those. I see a number of you are putting in your answers now. Now we're starting to see the answers come in. From the chat room, why isn't there a practice exam for Core 2 on my website? For those of you that look through my Core 1 materials, you'll notice there's a book that I created, which was my practice exams book. Where's the Core 2 practice exams book? Why isn't there one? Well, because it has not been published yet. I am in the process of writing it. These things have to follow the laws of physics, I'm afraid, and I am in the process of finishing that up. So I hope to have that available in the coming months, hopefully sooner. We'll have to see. There's plenty of good stuff in there too. It's coming along very nicely. I'm very happy with what's coming along. It won't be long before you see it, but it's just not out there right now. I am absolutely well along the way of getting it done, though. It's going to be a good one. Might even add some additional pieces to it, like a video to go along with it. It's kind of hard to do performance-based questions in a book for Core 2. It's kind of like that. ETA is not 2 months. It's the coming months. It could be 3 months. It could be 1 month. It could be 6 months. You might never see it. How about that? That's one of those things where we just don't know until it happens. And then it will suddenly show up. You never know. Let's see how you did with this question. Match the utility to the description. Let's start with CD. For those of you who know what CD is, that's change directory, and that would match F, move to a different working directory. We're changing the current working directory to something else. CD matches with F. Disk part, if you'd ever need to configure anything with the disk, especially the disk partitions, you would go to disk part and manage the configuration of a volume. Among other things, you can format a volume, you can create a volume, you can delete a volume. The disk part utility allows you to do a lot of different things, and that is just one that it does, is manage the configuration of that volume. Task kill. The name almost gives it away. It kills a task. It terminates an active process. That is what task kill does, terminates the active process. That might have been a gimme, but it's still something you have to know for the exam. And lastly, GP update. Your general practitioner. No, it's not general practitioner at all, is it? It's plenty of things you can do with your processes. And whenever you start working with Active Directory, you're going to be doing a lot of processes and configurations and settings. Whenever you start dealing with these, you'll be managing Active Directory computers. You'll be doing GP update quite a bit to be able to make that work. So those are the four. We have the CD was moved to a different working directory. Disk part was manage the configuration of a volume. Task kill terminated active process. And then GP update was manage Active Directory computers. Hopefully you were able to match those up. Now, for those of you wondering, do you get partial credit on these questions? CompTIA doesn't tell us. They say sometimes you might. They say sometimes you might not. So not really a great answer, but there it is. Now, there were 3 answers here that we did not match. For bonus points, let's go through each one of those and figure out what they are. The one that didn't match, A, was prepare a drive before storing files. What would we use to prepare a drive before storing files? The other one was list all files on a drive, and the last one we did not use was update the drivers on a Windows image. So let's start with preparing a drive before storing files. That would be the format command. We would be adding a file system to a partition so that you can then store files on it. You can't just create a partition and then start storing files on it. You need some type of indexing. You need some type of process to keep track of where all those files happen to be. That is your file system. And preparing a drive before storing files would be the format command. Second on our list was list all files on a drive. That's the dir or directory command. And lastly, update the drivers on a Windows image. That's DISM command. If you ever get into deploying Windows, managing a Windows deployment, you're going to be using that command quite a bit. So it's a good thing to at least be aware of, especially if you're asked to perform some of these DISM commands. You'll know what that command is doing, is modifying the drives on a WIM file, a Windows image file. So if you ever see those files that are WIM, W-I-M files, that is the tool that allows you to do that. So those are the 4 items you have to know, and then the 3 bonus ones we threw in there, just so you would have access to those things. If you want to know more about any of these commands, they are from the 221,002 section 1.4. The video name for this is Microsoft Command Line Tools. So hopefully you did well on that performance-based question. It's a matching question, and you could certainly get matching questions at the very beginning of your exam, not a multiple choice that you would have to work through. Let's shift gears and go back to multiple choice, though. Here's our next question on our list, which is A Linux administrator is using the iwconfig command at a server prompt. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be A, to update an application to a newer version? Would it be B, change the ownership of a file? Would it be C, view a wireless network configuration? Would it be D, modify the write permissions of a directory? Or E, view all running processes? 5 different options there. A Linux administrator is using the iwconfig command at a server prompt. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for that? Pick from that list. And remember, no answers in the chat room, please. No hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're taking this exam. We don't have anything available. No Googling. Stop Googling that to be able to have that there. See if you can lock in your answer here. See if you happen to know what this one is. These are all commands you have to know. You have to be aware of when you're working with some of these. So make sure that you are familiar with what all these happen to be. This will come in handy if you ever want to get in a situation where you need to use some of these. This is one you're going to have to know. So make sure you are familiar with this. The options are update an application to a newer version, change the ownership of a file, view a wireless network configuration, modify the write permissions of a directory, and view all running processes. That's what you want to run to be able to do this. If you think you know the answer, lock in. A number of you have locked in the answer. So we're going to go have a look at what all of the different answers were. So let me quick first, because we are having this weird thing happen with this. We'll refresh the screen and let's see how we did with this question. 83% of you, pretty solid number, say that you use this to view wireless network configuration. 9% of you say you modify the write permissions of a directory. 7% say view all running processes. 1% said change the ownership of a file. And just under 1%, rounding down to 0, is update an application to the newer version. Well, if you're working in Linux and you're working with the network, then you need to know those commands. The iwconfig command is a good one to know. If you need to change, view, manage anything related to the wireless network, it is the iwconfig command. Great way to do that. So if you need to connect to a network or specify a particular SSID or a particular network name that you would like to connect to, there's a good example of it. You can take the iwconfig for ETH0 and choose the ESSID, which is the Extended Service Set Identifier, which is the same thing as the network name, and then choose the network name that you would like to connect to. That is the command you use. For those of you that always worked with wired networks on Linux, there's a similar command, which is the ifconfig, the interface configuration, which allows you to manage network interfaces, IP configurations. In fact, you might use both iwconfig and ifconfig to manage a wireless connection, one for the wireless type settings and the other one for the IP addressing that's associated with it. So both of those are important to know. Both of those are from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those. That's going to be an important thing to know. This comes from my 221,002 section 1.9 basic Linux commands. A number of people have said, well, the only thing you have to know for the A+ is Windows. It's a very specific command, except you have all of this Linux content. You have all this Mac OS content you have to know. It's not just Windows. You have to know quite a bit about both of those other operating systems, so make sure you're familiar with it. That would be the right answer. 83% of you got that one absolutely right. 9% said modify the write permissions of a directory. And very commonly you would do chmod to change the mode of a file or directory in Linux. That's what you would use for that. 7% said view all running processes. On a Linux command, that would be the ps command, which is the processes command. So that would not be the right one. iwconfig would not show you any of the processes. 1% said change the ownership of a file. chown is the one that allows you to change the ownership of a file or the group ownership of a file. And then 0% update an application to a newer version. There's different ways to do this in Linux. But of course, there is the apt-get, there's yum. And of course, you could always install these things yourself and compile them and put them on a Linux machine. That would also update an application to a newer version. iwconfig would not do that. The best answer, the only answer in this case, would be C, view a wireless network configuration. Let's do another multiple choice question. Got one more for you here. This next question asks, A Soho user is connecting a new laptop to the wireless network using a PIN. Which of the following would best describe the technology used for this process? A Soho user is connecting a new laptop to the wireless network using a PIN. Which of the following would best describe the technology used for this process? Is it WEP, WPA, WPS, WAN, or WAP? Quite a bit there. Is it WEP, WPA, WPS, WAN, or WAP? Got quite a few W choices to choose from. Feel free to lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and locking in your answer for those. Please, again, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room to be able to do that. Plenty you can work with here. Maybe some of you have connected a new laptop to the wireless network before using a PIN. For those of you listening in on the podcast, that's a PIN. A PIN, which is different than a pin. It's a pin. Is it a pin or pen? Difficult to know. But that's why I thought I'd mention that for those of you listening in for all of those. When do I think CompTIA will call the Wi-Fi standards Wi-Fi 4, 5, and 6? Maybe when we start doing it. Nobody's calling it that yet. I know that that's what they're naming it now. They're going back and changing the names of all the Wi-Fi standards, but those types of changes don't tend to roll out very easily. Imagine the years of content that have been created with 802.11n, AC, all of those things. Whenever you start doing that, you do run into challenges. Eventually, not just CompTIA, eventually all of us will start calling it that, but it's going to take a very long time to be able to do that. Maybe the newest version would probably be the easiest one, I think. Will be the easiest one to do because it will be brand new. We've never created content before. There's not a lot of documentation out there for it. And so we'll start calling it something that's a little friendlier than 802.11, whatever it happens to be. Which is kind of a pain to do something like that. A lot of you are locking in your answers for this one, so let's see how you did. The question was, a Soho user is connecting a new laptop to the wireless network using a PIN pin. Which of the following would best describe the technology used for this process? Well, let's find out what that would be. Would it be WEP, WPA, WPS, WAN, or WAP? How did we do? 49% of us say that's WPS. 22% of us say it's WEP. 17% said WPA, and 10% said WAP. And only 2% said it was WAN. So, of course, the four technologies associated with wireless networking, WEP, WPA, WPS, and WAP, those are all four actual real technologies used with wireless networks. But only one of them could be the right answer. And if you've ever connected a device to a wireless network and used a personal identification number, then you were using WPS, the Wi-Fi protected setup. I guess you could still do it. I talk like you did it in the past, and that's the only time you do it. You could do that now if there is a device that allows you to be able to use that. The idea is that it would be an easier way for devices to connect to a wireless network rather than having to tell someone, configure your system for WPA2 Enterprise. Make sure your username and password is there. Check the 802.1x box. There's so many different configuration settings to be able to do that. But one of the things that makes it a little bit easier is just putting in a personal identification number, maybe using a push button on the access point. Some of these devices were using near-field communication. We don't use USB anymore. That was an option that was originally used. It used to be that this was a problem. This was a significant security concern because there are technically only about 11,000 possibilities for this personal identification number. These days, most of our wireless access points, though, have a lockout function, so you can't brute force it any longer. So the worries about the problem with the limited number of pins that could be chosen are at least a little bit less affected because the brute force is not something you can do. So it's still not something you would probably want to turn on. 11,000 isn't a lot. That's a lot less than the 10 million that we thought we had. So that would be a place where you go. And you might be using an older access point that doesn't have a brute force configured on it. So best practice is go ahead and just do that. What we've done is make our clients so it's easier to get onto a wireless network. That was the real answer. We sort of had a problem we fixed the wrong way. Instead, we made our clients so that they would connect to the network a lot easier and figure out a lot of the configuration settings on the back end and having all of those things there. So WPS is the right answer. 49% of you did choose that one, and that was exactly the right answer. Whenever you start getting into figuring out what you want to be able to do with this, you should also know all of these other terms that are in here. WAN is a wide area network. That has nothing to do with wireless networks necessarily. It refers to a network where the two endpoints of the network are located in very geographical distant areas. So in another city, in another country, you're going across a wide area network. The WEP, WEP, is the wireless equipment privacy. That's one of the very first WEP type, very first encryption types we used on our wireless networks. We, of course, found some significant cryptographic vulnerabilities associated with WEP, so do not use WEP any longer. And, of course, all your access points these days don't even give you the option. WPA is what we replaced WEP with, the most modern version of that being WPA2. I say modern. It's been around, almost 10 years now. So WPA2 is the version that we are mostly seeing. WPA3 is actually coming out shortly. That will be a new version of WPA. It doesn't change a lot. It adds a little bit longer keys, gives us a little bit more security, but WPA2 is so good that it doesn't take much to make it a little bit better. So we just increased it just a little bit, made it a wee bit bigger, a wee bit harder to crack and brute force. And WAP is a wireless access point, kind of a generic term to describe a wireless access point device, a WAP. 10% of you chose that one. The only answer here that makes any sense to use a personal identification number is the WPS. That is the one that is in that list, the Wi-Fi protected setup. That's the one you should have chosen. Answer C was the right answer, having all of those. Plenty of different options there. Well, already we've gone through Linux command lines. We've matched up Windows command line information. There was wireless connectivity that we had to deal with. And of course, there's so much additional operating systems, security, troubleshooting, and so much more in the 221002. And all of my videos, I have 137 A+ videos. And if you're able to watch all of those, good for you. Thank you for watching them. But I recognize that not everybody has 18 hours and 29 minutes of their time to go through every single one of those videos. But each video has really important information that will help you for your 221001 and your 221002 exams. So what I did was, so that you wouldn't have to go through all these videos, I created a set of notes that are correlated and go along with my videos. So you can either use these notes and follow along, or you can use these notes afterwards to have a record of everything important that was from those videos, all the text, all the graphics, all of those tables that I have in there. They are all in that list. In fact, here is a copy of the PDF version of these course notes that I have here. My 1002 course notes, 51 pages worth to go through. So we were just talking, for instance, about some of the SOHO and wireless networks. Let's secure a wireless network. I'm going to click on that, and you'll get all of the text that comes from that securing a wireless network. If there are graphics or other charts that might help describe things, like here's one for spoofing, those are in the notes as well. Everything is in these course notes. All of the text, everything. I don't leave anything out of these. I leave the bad jokes out. Nobody wants to read through those. They weren't that great the first time through. And it's another great way to support the site. So for those of you watching the free videos, thank you so much. That is a great way to support what we do here. And another great way is to buy some of these training materials that also might help you. You can find out more about this at professormesser.com/1002 notes, 1002 notes, and be able to have a look through those. Maybe there'll be something there can help you with your certification process. Let's do some more questions. I've got Another multiple choice question that we can talk about. A user is searching with Google, amazing, to research for an upcoming project. Each time they perform a search, the results page displays information from a different search engine. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Should we change the primary and secondary DNS server? Should we run an anti-malware utility? Should we install the latest OS updates? Should we use a different search engine? Or should we upgrade the BIOS? So a user is searching with Google to research for an upcoming project. Each time they perform a search, the results page displays information from a different search engine. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? We change the primary and secondary DNS server? Would we run an anti-malware utility? Would we install the latest OS updates? Would we use a different search engine? Or would we upgrade the BIOS? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know which one of those would be the best way. In fact, with this one, there could possibly be two different options here to be able to resolve this, possibly three different options to resolve this issue, but only one is the best. And this is one of the things that you will see when you start working with these on the actual exam, is that you have to find the best of multiple possible answers. This is not one where we're trying to figure out, technically we could do that, technically we could do this. Well, we're not looking for technically, we're looking for which is the best way to resolve this issue. And best has, I realize there's a context there that you have to keep in mind, but best would be the easiest way, the fastest way, the least expensive way, the way that we would be able to solve this and go on to the next thing. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this. Whenever you start breaking through these questions, it's one way to start figuring out the details of these. Let's see how you did. A number of you have locked this one in, so we're going to go see what these answers happen to be. A user is searching with Google to research for an upcoming project. Each time they perform a search, the results page always displays information from a different search engine. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Is it change the primary and secondary DNS server? Is it run an anti-malware utility? Is it install the latest OS updates? Is it use a different search engine? Is it upgrade the BIOS? And 64% of you say you would run an anti-malware utility. 24% of you say change the primary and secondary DNS server. 10% of you said use a different search engine. And only 2% said install the latest OS updates, which I'm surprised at. And 0% say upgrade the BIOS. Nobody bit on upgrade the BIOS. So which one of these would be the best way to do this? Well, first we have to recognize what's going on here. This is a very clear-cut case of a browser that is being redirected or hijacked. It's a situation where the browser itself is not one that is doing things we are not expecting. We're expecting to go one place, and suddenly we're going somewhere else. How did that happen? That's not exactly what we would want to be able to deal with. That is a very different situation. Whenever you have your browser going somewhere you did not tell the browser to go, that is a significant security problem. The most common cause of this is going to be malware. You've gotten infected, the malware's gotten into your browser, and the malware is controlling where your browser goes because it's on the system and has the same rights that you do. And if you can go to a different website, then the malware can go to a different website. So you want to grab an anti-malware, antivirus cleaner, clean it up, or I say that this is not the best option because it isn't. There's no guarantee, there's no 100% guarantee that you will ever be able to clear malware once it has infected a system. That is just the reality of malware. So the best thing you can do is just nuke everything and restore from a known good backup. That is the default for most people. Most organizations don't mess around. They don't want you to sit there and try to get rid of the malware and try to break through what really happened or go through the differences of this, or that's not what they want you spending your time on. They want you to make sure the malware's gone and get the person back up and running quickly. So the answer here very clearly is to run an anti-malware utility. 64% said to do that. And the reason that's the answer There's obviously a better answer, which is delete everything and restore from a known good backup. That was not one of the answers here. You'll notice the questions on the exam often do this. The thing that we would say is the best answer is not what is available. But that's not what they asked. They asked which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue. So you only have 5 options. And let's take that to its obvious next step. The reason backups aren't listed as an option is because this organization didn't have a backup. So there you go. There are perfectly reasonable reasons why that isn't one of the options that is there. So there's a good example of why maybe an option would not be available. Maybe it's just not available to you. Can't do it. So running an anti-malware utility would be the best reason. Now, I mentioned there are 2 other answers on here that it could be. Let's, in fact, go through those and have a look. The one that I thought would be the obvious next best answer might be one like installing the latest OS updates. And if you're familiar with running the operating system updates that you get every month from Microsoft, you'll notice every month they run an anti-malware, antivirus program looking for known things like this. And it goes through and runs through a lot of them. So sometimes installing an OS update might accidentally, inadvertently, be able to resolve some of these problems as well. They know that it's a great time to do that. So if somebody doesn't have antivirus and anti-malware enabled on their system, maybe just installing the updates would do that. Only 2% of you chose that. That wasn't the right answer, given all of the other things here. But that would be why that one would apply. Use a different search engine. Not the right answer. Hey, this one's not giving me the answer I like. Let's just try something else. And if you're using a different search engine from Google, at least right now, you're probably not getting the best results anyway. Not a great answer. The malware is probably going to redirect you from the other search engine. The second most popular, go to Bing. You go to Bing, the malware is going to see you typing something into Bing, and they're going to take you somewhere else along with that. So that's not going to work either. Using a different search engine will not be helpful at all. Change the primary and secondary DNS server. 24% of you chose that one. That's the thing that did surprise me with this one, because changing the DNS server would only change where the IP address was that was resolved from a name that was typed in. It would not change the malware from redirecting you to reallyBadSearchEngine.com, because reallyBadSearchEngine.com is going to resolve regardless of what primary and secondary DNS server you connect to. However, some of you may be aware of certain DNS providers that will block known bad sites. So this would be a case where if you were connected to one of those DNS providers and it tried to go to reallyBadSearchEngine.com, it would present a message to your page on the page that said, you can't go there because this has malware, or it simply doesn't allow you to go there and you don't see the page, which means Google is broken, which has a whole different set of problems associated with it. Not the best answer here. The best answer here is, instead of fixing the symptom, let's fix the problem, which is to run an anti-malware utility. That is the right answer. That's the one you should choose. 64% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice question. I've got another one queued up for you. This question asks, a desktop administrator would like to implement a backup solution that would rebuild an entire OS with a single process. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be an incremental backup, a cloud file share, an offline backup, an image level backup, or a differential backup? A desktop administrator would like to implement a backup solution that would rebuild an entire OS with a single process. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be incremental backup, cloud file share, offline backup, image level backup, or differential backup? Got 5 options to choose from. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Should be a good way to figure that one out. See if you happen to know what these happen to be. This is a good one to step through, because now each one of those answers that's listed here, incremental backup, cloud file share, offline backup, image level backup, differential backup, all 5 of those perfectly reasonable backup methods. So see if you can know what the differences are between all 5 of those. Even if you think you know what the answer is, see if you know what the other non-correct answers are referring to, because all 5 of these could be answers for a question on your exam. All of those technologies are on the 1002 exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar. If you ever see anything in my answers that you don't recognize, you don't know what that happens to be, make a note of it and go back to your exam objectives and go back to your notes and your books and your videos and have a look at those. Figure out the details. Yeah, phone a friend. I've got my phone handy right here. Give me a call. It's already been ringing, as you probably heard earlier. Nobody ever calls until I'm on a live stream. Then people call all the time. Nature of the beast. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a desktop administrator would like to implement a backup solution that would rebuild an entire OS with a single process. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be incremental backup, cloud file share, offline backup, image level backup, or differential backup? 79% of you, a vast majority, say an image level backup. But we kind of have a 4-way tie for second between incremental backup, cloud file share, offline backup, or differential backup. So we've got a number of different strategies to choose from. And backup strategies are, there's never any perfect solution. There's probably a combination of solutions that you would use to have the best possible backups on your network. One that's very common, that is so simple to recover from, is an image level backup. It's one where you have an entire image of a system, effectively everything it takes to restore the operating system, all the applications, all the user files, everything on that system is contained within a single image file. And I mentioned earlier when we talked about getting rid of malware, you nuke everything and restore from a known good backup. This is a very good strategy for that, because you nuke everything on the machine. You tell the image file, okay, dump everything back to this machine now. It effectively overwrites, re-images that particular machine, and now it's back to the way it was when that image was originally taken, with all the same files, all the operating system. So you're not installing an operating system and then restoring applications, installing those separately, and then restoring user files separately in this multi-step process. Nothing's ever the way it was when you started. But with an image, you get effectively a snapshot in time whenever you took that image and it put it onto that system. Now you've got exactly the same system that was running when that image was originally taken. That's the real benefit of that backup, is to be able to have that there. In the chat room, how would I know the image wasn't corrupt? Why would the image be corrupt? Did something happen to the image? Did you do something to the image? It's exactly the same image that it was when you took it originally. So everything that was on the computer at that time is exactly what will be restored when you restore that image back. Now, there's also file level backups. You might also do file level backups throughout the day. So you take a big image once a week, and then maybe multiple times during the day, you're copying user files off to a third-party backup so that you've got other files that maybe are fresher than what was on the image. And you're able to do that. Some images allow you to update individual files. So you could also update the files that are in the image. So a couple of different ways to handle the file level backup. And in fact, I do the same thing on my servers. I have images I take every night. And then throughout the day, I'm performing backups. I do separate database level backups, separate file level backups. They get stored in different places because I am paranoid. I just never know what's going to happen. I have to be prepared for anything. So if suddenly my internet service provider decides not to provide me with service anymore, something happens, they lost their lease, everything must go, I can easily shift over to a new internet service provider, bring up my system, and in a very short period of time, be able to do that. So important to have that there. These backup strategies are important. How would you know the system wasn't bad when you take the image? Well, that's sort of the idea behind backups, of course. And you may not have a single image. You may have images that go back 30 days. The real key, of course, is a known good image. When was the last time the system was working fine? Well, it was working fine on Monday. Let's use Monday's image and get things going. That's how you know. And if that doesn't work, you keep going back in time until you have an image that is the right one. Catch it before that malware infects it and have all of those things. So if you did answer an image level backup, 79% of you chose that one. Absolutely the right answer. There's also a number of you chose incremental and differential backups. Those take a full backup and then either copy the next day all the files that were changed since the full backup, or every day only copy files that were changed from the previous day's backup. Those the difference between incremental and differential, which I do go through in my videos. Those are multiple steps to restore, because you have to have first the full backup, and then you either have to have all of the incremental backup since then or the differential backup within as well. So those are multiple step process to restore. And offline backup only describes where the backup is stored. It doesn't describe how you would restore all of that information. An offline backup could just as easily be incremental and differential as it could be image. So that's not the best choice. It's not the best description of what we're looking for. And a cloud file share, that is certainly not going to rebuild an entire operating system with a single process usually. Usually a file share that's in the cloud is sharing the user's documents, single files. It's not generally copying the entire operating system out there. So that's the important part of this as well. Those are the different options. In this case, image level backup really was the best option, probably the only option that would allow you to restore it to a single process. And 79% of you were absolutely right with that one. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, or you need to collect CEUs, if you don't know what a CEU is, then this doesn't matter for you. But if you are someone who is collecting CEUs, what you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. And in there, you want to put your name. You want to put your email address. Make sure it's correct, because I emailed these back to you. You'll want to put in the subject line that this is the August 2020 Core 2 study group. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, image level backup. That is the super secret code word of the month, image level backup. You can also put anything you would like into that message as well. In the body of the message, I read through every single one of them. I'm not able to respond back to all of them because I get quite a few of these in, but I do that. And then, of course, I will send you an email that certifies that you must have watched this. I'll digitally sign the email, and that will send you back a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That's what that does. Make sure you follow the process. If you do not follow that process, I throw it out, because following the process is part of earning the CEU. And unfortunately, I have to throw out quite a few of these when they come in because people don't follow the process. That's the only way I know that you watch the video, is that you know what the process happens to be. And it's remarkable how many people try not to do that. And that's not fair to anyone. Make sure you go through and have a look at that. That will, I usually get those back in about a week. It doesn't take me very long to turn those around. If you need them faster, just let me know and I can speed it up for you. If you're on a tight time frame, a lot of you start collecting the CEUs right at the end of what you're trying to do. And a lot of people now are using CertMaster CE instead of collecting CEUs. That allows you to renew in just a few hours. So if you're down to the end part of this, collecting CEUs is just a horrible way to do this. It takes so much time and so much effort that you could just take one single test and renew your certification. That may be the easy way to do it for many of you. And I have a video on that. So you can go to my YouTube channel and look for how to renew your CompTIA certification in just a few hours. That's the name of the video. You can literally do that. If you ever collected CEUs, it's a godsend. So it's fantastic to be able to do that. Let's do another multiple choice question. I've got one for you. Here it is. Everything looks good. A user would like to protect their personal Windows 10 laptop using BitLocker. What is the minimum edition of Windows 10 that would be required? Would it be Home, Pro, Education, or Enterprise? A user would like to protect their personal Windows 10 laptop using BitLocker. What is the minimum edition of Windows 10 that would be required? Would it be Home, Pro, Education, or Enterprise? A lot of people ask me questions. Why do we have to know these editions? Well, that's why. You'll be in a meeting full of people that go, we need to put BitLocker on our laptops. What do we need to load up there? Let me Google. I don't know. They're going to want an answer. They need an answer quickly. You need to know those answers, being able to do it. See if you happen to know what it is. If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. That is what you would be able to do. figure out those details. If you just got your A+, you probably do want to wait about 3 years for taking the Cert Master, because when you pass the Cert Master, you're renewing it for 3 years. So that's not what you want to be able to do. That is not the breakdown that you want to have. You don't want to take your test and the next day take Cert Master. You're renewing it after a day. So now you've extended it to 3 years and a day. That's not what you were trying to do either. So yes, wait until you're just about ready to have those retire or expire, rather. Expire is the right word. And then take your Cert Master CE. So if you just got your A+, yes, wait 2 years and 300 days, 360 days maybe. And then that would be the right way to do it. I think that's the most common way. Most of us we wait until the last minute anyway. It's just human nature. You get to the last week and you realize, oh, wait, I have to renew this. And then you're scrambling. And now you don't have to scramble. Take Cert Master CE. It's done in a few hours. You're finished for 3 years. That's the great way to do it. That's the way I would do it. If I had to renew that quickly. It's a great way to do it. A lot of people have done it. Let's see how you did with this question. Get these answers. A user would like to protect their personal Windows 10 laptop using BitLocker. What is the minimum edition of Windows 10 that would be required? Is it Home, Pro, Education, or Enterprise? 73% of you think it's Pro. It's pretty strong. 13% of you say Home, and almost the same number of you say Enterprise. Only 4% of you say Education. This is one of those cases where knowing what the features are of Windows 10 is going to be pretty important. And of course, in my video in 1.2 of the 221,002 video series, in my overview of Windows 10 video, I have a chart for it. So you will see BitLocker not available in Windows Home, but BitLocker is available in Windows Pro. It's also available in Education and Enterprise, but you don't get to use BitLocker until you are using Windows Pro. Now, that's part of the question here was one of those where I was kind of leading you down a path, making sure that you knew not to take the wrong path with this one, because the question asked, a user would like to protect their personal Windows 10 laptop. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's a personal laptop or not. You need to have the edition of Windows that's going to support BitLocker. But a lot of people on their personal devices, they may go out to Best Buy, they grab a laptop, they purchase the laptop. That laptop may have Windows Home on it. So that's a good point. You have to tell the user, well, we're going to have to upgrade your Windows to the Pro version of Windows 10, and then you will be able to use BitLocker. And of course, they'll ask, oh, is there anything else I get for doing that? Well, there's some things. You get to be a domain member, which you don't use at home. That's not very useful. You get to use Hyper-V on your machine. So there's some benefits to upgrading to Pro for some people. If you have a lot of memory in the machine and you want to go over 128 gig memory, you can go up to 2 terabytes, I guess. That's one of the benefits of doing that. Probably can't fit that much in a laptop, though. Probably not going to be the benefit that a lot of people are looking for. That is the minimum edition, though, is Pro. That's the one you want to use. If you ever want to reference that, that is in that 1.2 section of the videos for knowing Windows. Hyper-V is the Microsoft virtualization client that you can run on a system. So if you've ever run VMware's Workstation, if you've ever run, what's the one from Oracle? It used to be the Sun. It's the VirtualBox. So VirtualBox, you ever run that on your system? VirtualBox, VMware, Workstation. It's the Microsoft version of that. Just built into Windows is Hyper-V. And being able to work with all of those. So that is the answer. We're right at the top of the hour, but let's get one more question in. Let's see if we can get one more to go on this list. The next question asks, which of the following would be the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server? Which of the following would be the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server? Would it be data loss prevention? Would it be access control list? Or would it be VPN concentrator? There's 5 options. Or would it be multi-factor authentication? So I thought there was another one there. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server? Would it be least privilege, data loss prevention, access control list, VPN concentrator, or multi-factor authentication? Lock in your answer. Here we are in overtime. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock it in and figure out what all those things happen to be. That's one that might help you as well as you are going through this. See if you're familiar with all of these different options. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server? We want to know. See if you happen to know. I'm watching you lock these in now. I can't Google that one. All these questions are brand new every month, by the way. So for those of you that haven't joined this before, next month will be a whole different set of questions. So you can't Google this question and get an answer because it's not on Google anywhere. It doesn't exist except here. This is the first time anyone's seen it and figured out the details, which would be the best way. I didn't capitalize best, but that's usually what the exam does, which would be the best way to prevent a server from accessing a remote server. It's another one of those best questions where technically it could be more than one thing, but it really is only one because we're looking for the best one. Really important to have those different options there. That would be the best way. Figure out the best way to have that and have the different options there. The different options would be least privilege, data loss prevention, access control list, VPN concentrator, or multi-factor authentication. Let's see if we can figure out the details of this. See if we can work through all of those. Let's do a quick refresh and we'll see what the answers are. Hopefully I won't have to do that refresh next time. Let's see how we did. 66% of you say access control list. 15% said multi-factor authentication. 11% said VPN concentrator. 8% said least privilege. And 0% said data loss prevention. So it's good data loss prevention that a number of you kind of fit onto the list of those to figure out the details of what's there. At least you know data loss prevention, not the right answer for what we were looking for. The key in this one is that we were trying to prevent a system from accessing a remote server. I guess the idea is that the remote server is right there, but I want to stop a system from accessing that server. What is the best way to do that? I just want to quickly make it stop. Which would be the best way to do something like that? And the best way really is an access control list. That's what access control lists do. That is basically the definition of an access control list, which is limit the access and control of a system across the network. So this is one where you would use this list of allow or deny to allow or deny traffic through the network and work through those. So very commonly people think of access control lists as being related to a router. And that's how in this particular slide, I'm talking about it from the perspective of a router or switch. But an access control list is a very broad term that can describe the rights and permissions you would configure in Windows. It would describe a control list or a security control list in a firewall. Those are technically access control lists. Some people refer to these as ACLs. Please don't do that. It just doesn't sound good. Yes, I know that people say it, but ACLs just doesn't work right with me. We can have a long conversation about why that isn't right. It just isn't. ACLs is the access control list. If you're in a group of people, that's how you should talk about it. It's an ACL. It gets a little jarring though when you hear that for the first time. There's certain criteria you can apply to an access control list. They can be IP addresses in the source or destination site. It could be port numbers. It could be different types of protocols like ICMP. There's plenty of ways to trigger me, by the way. We can talk about how there is no such thing as a layer 3 router, a layer 3 switch. It's a layer 3 router. And also a lot of people know to send me emails and try to talk to me about category 5 and gigabit Ethernet. That's another thing we can go down the road. ACLs are fantastic though, because you can configure that router, that switch, that firewall, that operating system, whatever has that method of allowing or disallowing traffic, you would do it using that access control list. It happens immediately to have that. The access control list is a simple way to do it too. If you ever have traffic going through and you would like to stop it, that's the way to do it, is the access control list. An access control list is 66% of you said that. But what about these other options? The other options, multi-factor authentication would add another step to people who were already authenticating into a system. It would not be the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server, however. If you have authentication to get in, then you have both the single and the multi-factor that's there. We're not talking about a hacker. We're just talking about a system being able to access a remote server. 11% of us said a VPN concentrator. Well, gosh, I guess we could build a separate machine that had a VPN concentrator in it, or we built a purpose-built. We bought a purpose-built VPN concentrator. We put the VPN concentrator in front of this device, and then we add a client onto everybody's computer who needs to get into that server. Wow, that's an involved process, when all we really needed to do was disable the capabilities of accessing that server with an access control list and being able to get there. So a VPN concentrator, although actually, that's technically correct, it is not the right answer. We're looking for the best way to prevent a system from accessing a remote server. And 8% of you say least privilege. Least privilege is a security methodology that limits someone's access to be able to do just the job they're assigned. So if you're in shipping and receiving, you only have access to the shipping and receiving applications and the data associated with shipping and receiving. You would not have access to the accounting information on the accounting server. That's what least privilege is. And in this case, least privilege is not the thing that would prevent a system from accessing a remote server. We want to choose the thing that would have the best possible effect. That would be the access control list. That is the right answer. If you answered C, access control list, you got it absolutely correct. In the after show, we'll talk all about Cat5 and running it on gigabit networks and how it works perfectly well and is part of the Ethernet standard. There is downloading objectives. Make sure you get your hands on these, by the way. This is pretty important. If you do not have the objectives, then you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. You want to be able to know exactly what's covered on the exam. And the way that you do that is get the objectives. They are a comprehensive list of what is available for you to learn on the exam. They're a fantastic checklist. If you want to know, am I ready to take the exam? This document will tell you, and it's a free document. Free. Download it. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives will give you a link that will take you over to the CompTIA website where you can have a look at those, be able to work through that. Very useful to have that functionality and all of that resource material. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. It should be the first thing you get when you're ready to take an exam, when you're ready to study for an exam. Should be the first thing you get. And the last thing, it's a great checklist for the last thing. So absolutely very useful to have that there. The objectives are identical around the world. There are not multiple types of objectives or different kinds of objectives. If you have the 220 1002 objectives, then those are the 1002 objectives used for the 1002 exam around the world. So you are in good shape. We do one of these study groups every month. Our next A+ study groups, we have a Core 1 study group on September 8th and a Core 2 study group on September 10th. And we've got a Network Plus study group on the 16th and the 23rd of September. Even this month, here in August, we've got a Network Plus study group next Wednesday and a Security Plus study group the Wednesday after that. So if you were trying to figure out when the next live event was going to be, it's always on our website. You can visit ProfessorMesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when the next event is going to be. And that's an easy way. Because you may be watching this video a year later and wondering, well, when's the next one going to be? That's how you do it. Go to my calendar. There's also a link to the calendar on the top of the website. You can always click on that. Well, we've done all of the questions that I'm going to ask you, at least most of them for the day. Now's the part where you ask me the questions. Stick around for the after show. You can ask questions in the chat room. I'll take questions on the phone lines. Don't forget about my A+, Network Plus, Security Plus Success bundles. For A+, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/1002success. Don't forget to follow us on the Twitter. smash the button or whatever the kids are saying these days. Please like this video if you did like it. It does help out, by the way. For those of you wondering why people always say that, is because the folks at YouTube are always looking at these numbers. And so they will assign a YouTube person, and I have now somebody from YouTube that I can talk to. We converse about how the channel's working. Are there any problems? Is there anything I should be doing? Anything I could plan on? It actually helps a lot. So it's not a nothing thing. You really are helping the channel. So thank you. Also, all the daily pop quiz questions are available on Instagram and on the Twitter. You go to professormesser.com/Instagram, professormesser.com/Twitter. It's a great way to get questions every day from the A+ exam. And don't forget about supporting us on Amazon at professormesser.com/Amazon. Stick around for the after show. Thank you for joining us in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Okay, let me see if I can click some buttons on this side and get the phone lines up and running. I'll also be taking questions from the chat room as well. Folks in the chat room were asking, is a MAC filter an ACL? Is that the same thing? Well, a MAC filter is a type of ACL. Yes, ACL is a very broad term. If you're allowing or disallowing traffic, that's an access control list. So if you're doing it by MAC address, that's an access control list. If you're doing it by IP address, that's an access control list. If you're doing it based on application type, that's an access control list. If you're doing it based on the group within an operating system that you happen to be a member of, that's an access control list. If you're doing it based on someone's username, that's an access control list. It's just a broad term to describe, am I allowing or disallowing traffic to pass through a device, an operating system, or a thing? That's how broad it is, a thing, to have that there. Let me get these phone lines up and running. I'm the only one here, so I'm the one that has to call into my own show and get this running. So if you will bear with me just a moment, we're going to click that button right now, and it's going to call in.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks so much for thanking me. I now type in a couple of numbers here and hit the pound sign.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I will do that. I'll hit my 6-digit PIN, and then we will see what happens.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thank you, nice lady, for welcoming me to my own show. That's very nice. So now I can tell you that you could call in if you would like to. Also take questions from the chat room. You're welcome to put them in there as well. So you're welcome to call in the continental United States. It's a toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. We've also got a way that you could call in from anywhere around the world for free by using Skype, because Skype does not require any Skype minutes to call a toll-free number. So you can go to Skype and you put a +1 at the beginning of this, +1 855-785-7545, and you will absolutely be able to call in there as well. So plenty of things to go through and work through on all of those. Question in the chat room, due to COVID-19, CompTIA now allows us to take the test from home. Yep, that's true. Is there anything in particular we should know about taking the test at home? Oh, yes. Holy smokes, yes. There is pages of things you should know about taking the test at home. It has to be done in a very secure environment. There's very particular things that they are looking for. You would not be able to do that here. Too many computers, too many monitors, too many things on the desk. They have very specific rules and regulations about what you can do. In fact, if you have two screens on your computer, you have to physically unplug one of those monitors. You can't have dual monitors during the exam. You can't talk to yourself during the exam. They're constantly watching you and listening to you during the exam. You can't be in a room that you can't close up. So it has to be a room that you can close in, has doors that hopefully you will lock, because if somebody walks into that room while you were on the exam, they will fail you automatically. So there's lots of great things about taking the exam online. Fantastic benefits. You don't have to go into a center. You don't have to put yourself at risk. Or maybe the exam center is just too far away from you. You don't have to travel there. So that's one of those things. Now, if it doesn't quite fit their criteria on the website, you can always talk to them. They will ask you to send them pictures of your area. So there may be cases where they might let you slide with one or two of those, but others they're very particular about. Somebody walks into the camera, you're failed just automatically. They just, nope, can't do it. They won't let you talk to yourself at all. But you may be in a case where you have to take more pictures than most because the environment's one where they really had to check. So definitely one of those things to be able to work through. It's not, once you have all those things in place though, works great. Relatively speaking, there are a number of people that have reported some bugs with the test taking process, things they weren't able to do on the screen properly, it hanging in the middle or hanging at the beginning. But if you prepare yourself mentally that there might be problems associated with that, maybe that would help out to be able to do that. So hopefully that's something that can help you as well to be able to go through all of those. Let's go to the phone lines and see what other people have at the 317 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Brian, calling from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I wanted to thank you. Your show helped me tremendously. I landed my first IS role doing desktop support, and I had a general question for you.
Congratulations, and fire away.
I was wondering, so as far as getting into working help desk, where would you recommend someone who's just entry level within a year or two worth of experience? Where could you easily see a candidate going?
Well, that's, I think, where a lot of companies like to see how well you do is at the help desk. I had just published a couple of weeks ago a video on YouTube. You can find it at my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. That is how to get a job in IT with no experience, where I talk about all the other things that can really help you when you get a job. And I think the point of that video was to tell people you need to get that first job in IT, and then you can kind of decide where to go from there. And a very common first job in IT is a service desk or a help desk type position. There's a couple reasons from a employer's perspective to put you into that position. First, they can kind of see how you are able to work in a business environment at this communication type environment. Help desk is a lot of people-person communication skills. And it's interesting that the technical skills we know are important. Sometimes the people skills that we have are even more important. So they want to see how well you work there. They want to see how well and knowledgeable you are with these technologies. They want to see if you're able to learn the technologies they happen to have in their environment. But then you get to decide what you want to do next. Whenever I worked in a help desk position, one of my very first jobs was at a corporate help desk. And our corporation was a $2 billion corporation in assets. We were a very big company, lots of different remote sites. It was a financial services company. So there was, a decent amount of money that the company had. And so we had all these different departments. There was a operating system desktop department. There was a department that took care of the servers. There was a department that took care of the network. There was a department that took care of databases. Another group of people took care of email. So you kind of have the entire smorgasbord of jobs available to look at, see which ones interest you the most, and then start learning everything you can about those technologies. For me, at that time, the desktop operating system was one I was fascinated with. We were migrating away from the older DOS days. Windows 3 and 3.1 was just becoming a thing. People were just getting their very first mouse and putting it on their desk and learning how to use it and working with Windows and having a graphical operating system and really extending the functionality of the computing technologies that we had. I was fascinated with that and wanted to learn everything I could about Windows. So I dove in and told my supervisor, if there's anything Windows related, the Windows people are doing, I want to be part of it. They're coming in on the weekend. I want to be part of those projects. If they're going to training, you can let me go to the same training. I want to be part of that. And then the next job I had right out of that help desk was automatically now taking an open position within that desktop team. But it could have been the same thing with the network team, with the server team, with the database team, with the email team. There were openings everywhere. It's one of the benefits of information technology is that there's always an opening in all of these very different and very diverse technologies. You just have to find the thing you really like. And that's the thing that's going to drive you into learning more and eventually getting that next job. And you don't have to lock yourself in either. My first job was in that help desk service desk. The next job was in this desktop operating system. I moved from there into server management. I moved from there into network management. I moved from there into security. So you don't ever in IT stay doing one thing your entire career. Very few people are in that type of position. Most of the time, our industry is changing under our feet, and therefore we are changing as well. And very often your interests are changing, which is great because now you can move up or move over doing something new and not lose interest in the technologies and learn more about the technologies and make yourself more valuable to an employer. So there's no direct answer to your question. The answer is find what you like to do and do as much of that as you can and become an expert in that thing, and the opportunities are going to open up for you.
All right. I appreciate your time, Professor. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for the call, Brian. I appreciate it as well. What a great position to be in. You get your certifications, you get that first job. The world's your oyster. Now it's up to you. Now it's you going out and finding what you would love to be able to do. Find the thing that interests you, and your interests, they'll change over time. It's always interesting looking back on my career, how my interest kind of worked with what the company needed at that time. And then suddenly it opened up more doors and more opportunities later on down the road. You never know what you do now, the effect that it's going to have later on. The ripples are remarkable when you start breaking those down. Next on our list is the 512 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi there, Professor.
Hello. Thank you for calling. What's your question? I hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Hold on. Let me make sure I don't have you on speakerphone. Hold on one second. Okay, I had to take you off speaker. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, I just wanted to give you a big shout out because you're doing such a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Especially during this pandemic and a time where, as students, we are somewhat displaced and having to do online courses and such. And I know there's a big movement out there saying, hey, our tuition's too high. Can you work with us a little bit? Because we're not getting all the amenities, the resources, the services of a university or a college campus. But to be honest with you, I really think this is a big step forward for all of us, and it'll make a big impression on the IT world. For all students of all ages, because I believe that it'll focus them more on the professor, on the courses. They won't have the social distractions, especially in a university where you're in an auditorium. And I just wanted to give you a shout out. Thank you sincerely. And I want an amen from everyone in the chat room because Professor Messer is going way above and beyond what we could ever ask for. And I know you all are shopping on Amazon now, so don't forget professormesser.com/Amazon.
I sure appreciate it. That's very kind of you. Thank you for even saying that. Thank you for the kind words. It is something, it's remarkable how suddenly this has changed in the world, that we went from training in person and some training online. And now, of course, everything has flipped over to training online. I went back this week and I've been doing these live streams for the study groups for over 9 years now. We're coming up on 10 years of study groups. And I started thinking, because I have my children are in college and taking college courses. They are not going to campus anymore. They're not happy about it. And one of the challenges is your teachers have never done this before. Many of the teachers, many of the people that teach in a university have never done this online before. And it's also not the same way you teach online as you would teach in a room. I used to do in-person training in a corporation in a training room with people sitting out there. It's different. It's online, and there's nuances and differences you have to kind of think about. I kind of take that for granted now because we've done it for so long that I kind of already tune in to what some of those things happen to be, and hopefully I'm constantly tweaking that as we go. So I appreciate the kind words. I'm glad it is working for a number of you that are watching. That's just a benefit on top of this. As long as you folks keep watching, I'll just keep making more videos. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, always in our prayers, Professor Messer. We all surely appreciate you. Let's all give Professor Messer an amen in that chat room. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. It's one of those situations where it all sort of worked out from a timing perspective where now suddenly everybody is online. And I think a lot of us too are realizing that we could be in a different industry. If you're someone who hadn't already been working towards an IT degree, I think a lot of people are now realizing that these minor things that can happen in the world could have major impacts on us personally. Maybe I should look at a type of career that would give me more flexibility and more options. And I've said it so many times on these study groups, what gives you more flexibility and more options than information technology? There is just so many different things you can do. If you don't like what you're doing now, you can change it. It's a little different. If you study to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. If you study to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. You can't really shift around. Well, today I'm really more interested in anesthesiology. Let me do that. No, you're a doctor. You're a surgeon. You need to surge. That's the important part of this. So I love IT, if only from that perspective. But of course, it's a technology that's so interesting. I meet so many fantastic people. I get to work with so many different technologies. It's kind of every single button is pushed for me. I get the people, I get the technology. There's always something new to learn. So the great benefit there. So if you're somebody who's just starting out in IT, you've got, it's so exciting. You've got a lifetime of excitement available ahead of you. Let's go to the next phone call, 609. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. I hear beeping. I hear in Jersey. Are you there, Jersey?
Yeah. How you doing, Professor?
So good. How are you? What can we do for you?
Good. So I really just started watching your video on YouTube about I believe 2 weeks ago, and I was in the health field, and I was in grad school. I was in grad school for occupational therapy. So while I did one semester program, I just felt like this wasn't for me because when I was in college, I was an engineering major, a computer engineering major.
Okay.
So my parents were all in healthcare, so I wanted to try healthcare. And after one semester of grad school, I really didn't. It just felt so slow for me, and I'm like the type of person that really wants to like explore. So I've always been interested in IT or technology, but my biggest challenge for me is I just wanted to know, like, for somebody who's coming in fresh into the field with I haven't really had a job as an IT person or did any computer related issue. But I've always had that in my sight, trying to like figure out what exactly in IT that I really want. And for somebody who wants to like maybe have an aspiration of going deep into IT, possibly get into some high level programming. But
where'd he go? Are you still there? We lost you there. You dropped off. I think we were actually getting to the end of the question there. I'm going to let it sit here. Are you still on the line? Now I'm hooked. Now I want to know the rest of the question. Are you there, Jersey? No, not there. So close. We had gone down that particular road to figure out what that happened to be. That's a shame. It's one of those things, though, that I'm hearing a lot of stories where people are kind of starting with one thing and then realizing maybe I'd be better on this side. That's a pretty dramatic shift, by the way, to go from healthcare and then go into technology, because I think those two things work on completely different sides of the brain sometimes to be able to have those things coming in. That's whenever I start looking at what options might be available. I see the mix because Mrs. Professor Messer is a registered nurse. She's a board certified nurse. She went through 4 years of college and got her nursing degree. Wants nothing to do with computers, has no interest in technology. Mine is very interested in technology, and I don't really have much of an interest in healthcare. So I kind of get where the caller was coming from with having all of those challenges in your mind of, I started down this road, but I really feel better going in that road. If you're someone who's interested in knowing now, what do I put together? What things, what elements do I need now to present myself best for that IT job? I would recommend going to that video I mentioned that I just released a couple weeks ago, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about first what IT is, and the caller just previously was kind of talking about some programming, and I kind of put together how IT is not application development and application development is not IT. So at least we have our terms figured out properly. And then I go from there and kind of describe for IT, what are those 4 elements that would really make for the best possible candidate for an IT position, even if you don't have anybody who is in IT, you don't have any experience or any job in IT previously. So you might want to go look at that. It's on the YouTube, how to get a job in IT with no experience. Let's go back to the phone calls. My neck of the woods here up in Georgia. Let's go 678 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you there? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem, which would not be beyond the realm of possibility, to be fair, but everything seems to look fine as I'm looking at it here. Are you there, caller? 678 area code? Anything's possible, right?
Hello?
There's the caller. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, right. I'm Sam. I'm actually calling from the UK.
Okay. Well, you're definitely not in Georgia. What can we do for you, Sam?
For you. Well, I'm obviously studying for my A+ at the moment, and I'm going through like a recruitment agency study program thing. I just wanted to know what would be the expectations at like a first day at the job? What would an employer want from me, or what kind of jobs do you reckon I'd be doing?
That's kind of a universal answer too, whether you're in the UK or whether you're somewhere else. I've done quite a bit of work in both London and in Scotland with getting systems up and running in large financial companies and putting in network management systems. So at least I got a little bit of insight into the type of jobs and what they're doing. As it turns out, very similar to the type of IT jobs you would find in the United States or Canada from that perspective. I think most companies work this way, is they want you in a job initially as someone who is a help desk. You get your foot in the door, doing what most of us call the grunt work. You are answering calls from people that have, in some cases, very mundane problems. My password, I've got locked out. I forgot my password. Went on vacation for a week. I came back. Now I can't remember, and it's locked me out. Can you reset my account? What could be more menial and boring than doing that type of job? But of course, the employer wants to see how you handle that type of job. They want to be able to see, how do you talk to this person? How do you handle the actual process of resolving their password problem? Do you learn more about the entire system, not just correcting the password, but now you're in the Active Directory infrastructure. You get a perspective of what's there. And it's not just, of course, that single thing that you would be working through, but it would, of course, be other problems that users would run into as well. Some of them not so easy to work through. And sometimes the employer is really looking to see, how do you handle the problems that you can't resolve, and what steps do you go through? That help desk is very commonly, almost universally, that first job you get in an organization. It's not always that way, but if you are in a large corporation, a network operations center, a server operations center, a NOC and a SOC, those types of jobs are the ones where you're either on the phone or meeting with people to solve their basic technology problems. They're also putting you in that position because now you're going to have a chance to kind of see what everybody else is doing. If you've never worked in IT, you may not have an idea of what the database administrator does, what the network administration team does, what the application server team does, what the cloud computing team does. So you get a chance to sit in the chair and kind of watch the conversations take place, meet the people in your organization, and in some cases help them out. They have a big project on the weekends where they're deploying a new set of switches, where they're installing a new set of computers, where they're setting up a new bunch of servers. That would be a great thing to be a part of and learn from. So the employer wants to see, do you have an interest in doing that kind of thing? And if you do, then when the next opening comes up, they can move you out of the help desk, move you into that cloud server team or whatever it happens to be. And then you continue growing and learning with those particular technologies. And they'll get the next poor schlep to come in who has to sit on the help desk and take your seat. And then the process begins again with them. It's kind of the circle of life with IT. The difference, though, is they want to see you growing and learning as you go. Unfortunately, I do see people, they've been on the help desk for 5 years, and they're just either very happy with being on the help desk, or they can't seem to get out of the help desk. Or maybe they just don't have the ability, they have the interest or whatever it takes to get off of that help desk. Help desk is generally the first step, and it's a temporary step. The real key is just finding the thing that interests you, talking with your management about the things that interest you so they know you have an interest to going there, and then you learning as much as you can about that. Your key is to become the expert in those topics. And then once you become the expert there, you need to go to the next thing where you become a dummy and become the expert in those topics. It's a never-ending process. No matter how far you proceed in your career, you will never know everything. The key is just to learn as much as you possibly can and see where all of this knowledge happens to take you as you go, Sam.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that sounds brilliant. I think I might end up being help desk for quite a while because my sort of passion for IT, it sort of it came about from basically r/Tales from Tech Support. I just loved reading all that, and I thought, I'd love to have those sort of days.
And some of them have some pretty crazy days on that tech support subreddit. What you'll find, though, is you'll suddenly one day there will be a technology that suddenly spins your neck around. For me, I was working with desktop operating systems and some servers, and somebody brought in and plugged in. In fact, I learned later that the company that I worked for bought one of the very first token ring network general sniffers to come off of the assembly line. It was a very new technology at the time. They plugged it in, and there was a bunch of people crowded around this little box, and it was making these Geiger counter sort of noises as the traffic was being seen by the device, and it was showing everything going over the network. And up to that point, I saw the network connection as a black cable I plugged into the back of a computer. I didn't have a concept that there were protocols and technologies that were communicating back and forth over that wire that I would be able to see, that I would be able to modify and interact with and optimize and measure and do all of these things with. I saw that and I stopped and I go, what in the world is this box everybody has? They go, oh, this is a sniffer. Look, we can see every single thing going on the token ring. We can see above that all of the different layer 3 addresses at the time, IPX, that we were communicating with. And then we could see the applications. Well, look at the emails going back and forth, and you can see them in the packets themselves. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And I said, where can I learn more about this? Where's the manual? And they go, oh, yeah, here it is. Nobody's reading it because why would we read the manual? Here's the manual. And I just poured through it to see, what does this thing do? What can it tell me? And then I started showing them features they did not know about because I had read through the manual. And I became effectively the expert in this product because nobody else had spent the time to learn anything about it. And ironically, or maybe not so ironically, my second job I got after that was with the Network General Corporation as a systems engineer representing their sniffer product line. So you never know when you run into one of these interesting technologies where that will eventually lead you. And ultimately, that's what set the foundation for me getting into IT security after that and next generation firewalls and spending years working with those technologies. Find the thing that turns your head, and that's eventually going to push you down the road. It will change the direction, the flow of the stream, and you're just along for the ride at that point. It will happen for you as well, Sam.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks for the call. I sure appreciate it. I think that's the thing that you have to find, though. You have to find that hook. You have to find that thing. And if I could give anybody advice, it would be to find the thing you're interested in and just dive into it. Learn as much as you can about that thing. It could be a very niche thing. It could be a single product. It could be a single technology that maybe in your organization, you notice people don't know a lot about it or they're afraid to touch it. Every company has a machine they're afraid to touch. Like, don't mess with that machine. That machine is controlling this. We're not exactly sure what runs inside of it. We've never opened it up. We think it runs on evil. We don't know. There might be things, and there might be silicon inside of it with memory and storage. We don't know because we're not going to touch it. We hope it doesn't get turned off because we're not sure it will turn on again. And it's really the fear of the unknown. The organizations don't know. There's nobody there working there that understands how it works. All they know is that it's such an unknown box that they're just trying to keep it going every day and have it not get on their radar. Well, I saw a box like that when I was working at an insurance company. I said, well, I can become an expert in that box. Hand me the manual for that software that's running on that box. Let me call the company. I called the tech support company that managed this saying, hi, I know nothing about this. I've been put in my job now is to handle this box. What should I do first? And the tech support guy's like, well, let me explain to you what you can learn so that you don't have to call me all the time. They were happy to tell me all of the things I should do to learn as much as I can about this technology and to then find ways to optimize the technology. It happened to be at the time that technology was one that every day it broke. Like it worked throughout the day, and then at a certain time of the day, we had 7 of these boxes set up. One of them would break every day. And somebody would have to go into the server room, reboot the box. It would start back up again. And so I had a manager just got tired of it. And they say, who wants to take this box? Who wants to figure out what's going on here and just take this off, make it so that it's not painful anymore? And I said, I'll do it. Nobody else is doing it. I was low man on the totem pole. Let me do it. I'll figure out everything to do with this. And you just grab it, you optimize it, you change it, you tell them how you're going to make the changes, you go through the change control process, you make the change, you see how it's working, you put it in the lab, you test it out, and eventually we got to a point in a configuration where suddenly it made it through one day. It did not crash. Then it made it through another day. And then suddenly we realized these things are running for weeks at a time, and now we're not having to babysit anymore. We're no longer getting complaints from the users. The entire company is running better because we had somebody focus on that technology and learn everything there was about it. Now, as it turns out, that technology was a LAN to coax type gateway that provided access to an IBM mainframe. Doesn't really help me today. That knowing that technology doesn't help me as I sit here in this chair now, except it helps me understand what I have to do to see a difficult problem, work through the problem, understand the different options I have available. Do we call a consultant? Do we call tech support? Do we try it in a lab? What do we do? You go through the process of doing that, and eventually you run into other problems where that same methodology applies. And then you keep doing it over and over again. You run into another difficult problem that's emotional and technologically difficult. No problem. I've done this before. Let's fix this one. There's going to be a fix. We're just going to figure out what it is. And you jump into it and you resolve it. So after a while, you start doing all of these difficult problems and people see you as the person who solves the difficult problems. And that skill alone can be really useful. So it's one of those where don't ever be afraid of the box no one wants to touch. You should be the one that wants to touch it. Is there some risk? Absolutely. But if you handle it in a way that is, in fact, the same way they teach you in all of these certification courses, the process of troubleshooting, the process of change control, the process of having a backup, having a way to roll back from a change you make, those are all real world things that we do all the time in IT. They're not just concepts thrown in a list of exam objectives so that you'll have something to learn that we can test you on. These are the things that we are doing. So that's why we tell you about the change control process and the change control committee, and having a set, knowing what the risks are for making a change and understanding the technical breakdown of what the change will be, and having a rollback plan and being able to test it when it's done and having the user sign off on it and documenting it when you're finished, because that's what we do every time. So when you're wondering, how do I get out of the help desk and where do I go next? That's up to you. Figure out what you like to do and just do it. Learn as much as you possibly can about it. It is remarkable how quickly you become the expert. You ever wonder how all those people become experts in what they do? Well, they started not knowing anything about those technologies. And all they ended up doing is learning as much as they can, spending time with it, getting down into the weeds and the guts of it and figuring it out and learning about, and then finally people are looking around for who's the most knowledgeable in this thing. Well, you are. You're now the expert. You become the expert because you make yourself that way. That's what you need to work through. If you're ever in that situation, that's what you should really work on, and working through all of those things. In the chat room, people are talking a lot about getting a job and where you should look for jobs and where you should post your resumes. This is a very popular topic on all of our study groups. In fact, I'm working on another video about resumes and applying for jobs and what employers are looking for and how you can maximize and optimize your resume and that type of thing, because it is probably your first technical challenge. We don't think of getting a job as a technical challenge. It is. It's absolutely a technical challenge. And if you have not browsed around the YouTube to see what all of the things you should be doing with a resume and how you should be positioning your resume, then you're not doing it right. Every job you apply to should have a customized resume. I don't know of a lot of people that do that, by the way. I see a lot of people that just throw the same resume out. I just took this resume, I sent it out to 100 people, and I didn't get any responses. Well, did your resume match what they were looking for? That's what you're trying to do. This is a game. This is a strategy. It's not a game, it's a strategy. This is a strategic implementation. If somebody is asking for somebody to fill a position and they're looking for very specific criteria, the document you give them about yourself should effectively match that criteria. If they're looking for somebody who knows something about this product in Windows, then that should be the first thing at the top of your list on your resume. Is that time consuming? Absolutely. Is it take a lot of effort to create a new resume for every job that you apply to? Yep, it sure does. But the person receiving this, because eventually somebody sees these, as long as all those keywords match, and that's a whole nother set of topics we can talk about, is matching keywords, because you have to get through the first automated process. It's an automated candidate measurement system that is able to look through your resume and see if it really matches with the keywords they're looking for. We're just going to assume that everything you know matches the positions that you're applying for. When you finally make it through the automated part, now a human being looks at it. And you have about 10 seconds to hook somebody. And that's the reality that the people reading these are telling us. I'm not making up that number. They say it's 6 seconds. It's more like 10. So I'm giving them a little leeway, but these recruiters or internal HR people will look at your resume. Usually it's a digital version of your resume. They bring it up on their screen, and you got to hook them in about 10 seconds, which means the first half of your resume should be the hook. You should get them hooked on you right then. So there's so many things around that. It's the way it looks. It's what it says. It has all of these really key pieces to it. And that's what I'm putting together, something more detailed, because you can't even do that to be able to do that here. But that's the important part of this, is to know, how do I optimize how I'm showing myself to be able to get these jobs? And I think some of the places that people are mentioning in the chat room to look for jobs, the LinkedIns of the world, the dice.coms, there's 7 or 8 different places you can go. And of course, putting your resume in directly with a company. Those are important to know. And it's a set of strategies, beginning with how you get through the candidate process, the automation that's in place, which is just a keyword search that a lot of people will do. And then from that point on, knowing how to have a human being like your resume. And then, of course, eventually you have skills you have to think about, which is how to talk on the phone, how to talk to someone in person. All of these things kind of go through there. People in the chat room going, what? There's keywords I have to worry about? Yes, there are a ton of keywords. And if you're someone who's ever worked with optimizing a web page and knowing that Google looks for keywords, it's the same thing except on a resume. And of course, it's even harder on a resume because every company is looking for different keywords. So that's the thing that becomes a little bit more of a challenge when you get through this. And we're going through this here in my home. My daughter just got her IT degree. What a great market. to have gotten an IT degree in. I mean that sarcastically, because now it's a challenge. How do you now use those IT skills that you've gotten in college and get a job in this market? So even more strategy you have to think about and being able to work through those. It is a challenge for that to happen. And we're probably going to do this in about a year, less than a year. I have another one of my kids who will get his cloud computing degree. We're going to go through the same thing again, and that entire process. It is a constant challenge of knowing what skills to bring to the table. It's your first big challenge as a technologist, which is to hop through that job hiring process. It's not the same job hiring process you go through to get a job at Target, to get a job at your local grocery store, to get a job where, at the local place where you were able to work part-time as you were in school. This is not a job waitressing or working in a bar as a bartender. There's a different set of strategies around it. So we're working through that. I'm hoping to have that video available soon, because I want to show you practical examples from a resume that are good and some that are bad. And so I'm effectively going back through my old resumes, which are just awful. I did not do a very good job with my resumes either. Thankfully, I knew people who could at least vouch for me. So sometimes that is the most important thing. But when you're getting your first job, you may not have that. It becomes so challenging to be able to make that happen, especially right now, isn't it? We've got this challenge right now that it is so difficult to now work in this kind of a phasing out of the pandemic type scenario. But the important thing is that the pandemic part is going away. We're finally ridding ourselves of this. We're getting back into some levels of normalcy. We will continue to get back to levels of normalcy. And then all of these companies are going to need to perform and get through all these big projects they've been working on. Think of all of these companies that have had to either slim down or stop doing anything. Now they've got to ramp back up. And to ramp back up, they're going to need technologists. You happen to be one of those. So now's the time to start putting together your strategy so that when they're ready, you can jump right into those. There's some companies that haven't even stopped, that this has been an increase in what they have been doing. So there's still people hiring out there, and they're growing, and these companies are doing more, and they need more people. You may find there's some companies in your area that need that as well. And now we're noticing all these companies are wanting you just to be available online. That's the thing that probably will change the most, at least in the short term, which is if you needed to work for a company that was in Silicon Valley, you needed to live in Silicon Valley. Well, now all of those companies have said, we're going to be remote for at least the next year. Well, that means you could live anywhere. As long as you had an internet connection, you could live anywhere and work for that Silicon Valley company. That's one that I think, at least I say short term, so in the next year, there will be a lot of remote positions. But I'm already starting to see the online articles written about, it all started with online work from home, remote person is so awesome. Now we're starting to see the articles come out with being in person in the office is a much better idea. So I don't know whether that's the industry and the newspapers and the people who write the articles just want more clicks, or whether there is actually employers that are rethinking this. But you just don't know yet. But I think right now, everybody's remote. You're going to see a lot of remote jobs over the next year. And then we'll start to see what happens. We'll see where we go from there. It will be interesting for all of us to kind of watch the track of these jobs and what they are doing. I think all of us, I worked from home a lot. Practically half of my IT career was me as a remote person. So when I started working as a systems engineer well over 15 years ago, I worked from home, but it was really a job where I was traveling. So I just didn't have an office. I would get in an airplane on Monday, I would fly around the country and then come home on Friday. And then I would just do the same thing the next week. So I was just constantly moving. It was a remote position, but I didn't have an office. I didn't go into an office. I didn't go into the corporate office. It was just constantly remote. So we had already had people doing that. Now we just have a lot more people doing that and in different jobs. It's one of those things that we told employers a long time ago, I could just do this from home. No, we need you in the office. It's so important. Everybody has to be here or we're going to fail. And then overnight, it changed from everybody has to be here or we're going to fail to everybody has to be remote or we're going to fail. So I think a lot of people are coming to grips, at least from a management perspective, are coming to grips like, oh, we could do this remotely. That might be reasonable. And I think IT especially has made the shift because we are effectively remote all the time. If you're a network administrator, the switches and routers weren't at your desk. Most of the time, they weren't even in the building where you were. The switches and routers were somewhere else. And you were just SSHing into those devices and managing those devices via an SMP and having the SIM grab those logs and pull them back to where you were. But most of the time, they weren't around you. We were already remote. Why were you having to drive into an office every day so that you could then remotely connect to a device that wasn't where you were? I think finally we've caught up to ourselves. Kind of what I'm saying. So now that we've caught up to ourselves, we now get to decide whether it's a good thing or not. Is it a good thing or not? I think the jury is still out, as they say. We will find out if it's still good or not. It just depends on if that's what we really want to do. All right, enough of me chatting about jobs and where they are. Let's go back to the phone lines. 516 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing? I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn.
My name is Kyle Martin.
Hey, Kyle. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
I was just having some thoughts about my current job position. So in about last year, November, October timeframe, I achieved my A+ and my Net+ certificates, and I was lucky enough to land a job as a contractor for something outside of the IT spectrum. It's more so in development. It's DevOps. I'm in a DevOps engineer position.
Okay.
And it's cool and all, and I gain experience from it. However, it's not quite necessarily the track that I want to pursue in my IT career. So my question for you is, when my contract is up and I start looking for other positions, where should I navigate my search to?
Well, you have some advantages. One of the things about DevOps right now, this odd mishmash that the IT industry has put together that somehow believes we can take developers, squeeze them into an operations type role, and come up with this hybrid job where you have somebody who is extremely knowledgeable in development, quote unquote, and merging them into a job where they are also managing the operational side. And one good thing about that is that it's a very specific kind of job. It really fits best in the environments we have today regarding cloud-based computing technologies. It's very niche in that perspective, and it doesn't fit what I think the industry was hoping it would do. I think the industry is finding out, hey, guess what? If you have a developer who's doing operations, what you end up with is somebody who's not a very good developer and is not a very good person in operations. There was a reason we kind of separated those things out. But in cloud computing, there's a reason to squeeze them together a little more. So there are places where that fits best. What's great about that, though, is that the rest of the industry sees DevOps as someone who is very capable in technology. You have worked in a role where you've had to automate a lot of things, and automation is a very valuable skill in IT regardless of what you do. Cloud computing and the technologies working around DevOps, primarily cloud computing, is a very important set of skills and very desirable in IT as well. So those things alone give you a little bit of some street cred when you walk in the door and want another type of job. So if you were interested, you're doing this DevOps thing now and you're becoming very knowledgeable in it and you're running these scripts and you're monitoring and there's the cloud and you're doing all of this, but you're thinking, man, I really want to go into networking, or I really want to go into security. I really want to have these other technologies I want to move into. Whoever you meet with on that side, the hiring manager for that side will be very interested in those particular skills you have, because those DevOps skills will be able to apply to all of these other things we do in IT. You are not learning skills in a vacuum that will only be able to do DevOps the rest of your life. You will be able to use those skills as a network administrator, as a database administrator, as a server admin, as a Linux admin, as a security professional. those skills apply across the board. So my recommendation for you, you sort of figured out, okay, DevOps is not where we want to go long term, but you want to be there at least doing this a year, because that's what employers like to see, is that you stay in these jobs for at least a year. So set yourself up a strategy for, let's do this a year. Let's get through these projects we're working on. You're probably going to find some additional things to learn associated with those. But at the same time, I'm certain you're working with other technologies in corporation with the DevOps work that you're doing. Maybe it's cloud-based technologies. Maybe it's servers and Linux. Maybe it's Windows. Whatever it happens to be, learn as much as you can about those technologies as well. Because when you show up at an employer and go, well, I've got a year's worth of DevOps behind me, they're going to perk their ears up just a little bit and go, oh, well, tell me more about that, because we got a lot of places here where we can automate. And I got to tell you, that's probably the place that many organizations have the least amount of expertise, is automation. I've been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies, talking to their IT people, working with them in their operations side, understanding what they're doing with their security, with their networks. And the orchestration and automation side is where most companies suffer the most. So you're getting some great skills. Don't worry that there's skills that maybe you just don't have a spark for, or it's not your number one thing. That's okay. Soak it in. Be a sponge. Learn as much as you can, because that's going to propel you to whatever that next phase is going to be for you. That's what's going to give you the ability to get your foot in the door on the next one. And from that point on, you can just follow whatever interests you. Just figure out what that is once you get a year of that under your belt, and I think you're going to be fine.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks for calling, Kyle. Best of luck. Whenever you start looking at the benefits of that, you're going to be in situations in IT, in jobs where you realize, I have made a horrible decision. Probably in my career, I have gone through, I think every other job, I guess I'm really bad at this. Every other job was one that I just it didn't click for me. I tried it. I gave it a shot. Wasn't my thing. One of the jobs was working for a value-added reseller. Just wasn't the right fit. One of the jobs was being a systems engineer manager. Wasn't the right fit. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot about being in management. I learned a lot about the things we could do from a management perspective. Learned a lot about the job process and where to find people and the hiring process and learning of those things. But boy, it just didn't click with me. And I'm one of those people that went into management, realized a year into this was a really not a great idea for me. Let's go back and do something technical. And it's difficult when those things happen, but you're so much happier on the other side when that type of things happen. And looking back, those skills are actually pretty valuable, because now you understand the concept of what people were doing whenever they were kind of telling you on the management side how things were happening. When you're not there anymore and things happen, you now know what's going on behind those doors and the process, and you have a little bit more understanding and empathy about what's about to come down the line. That knowledge is valuable. Whether it was a knowledge you like or don't like, it's still valuable. It's something you'll be able to use throughout your career. Let's back to the phones. It's Harold. Hi, Harold. What can we do for you?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I actually have a question regarding additional certifications beyond other CompTIA certifications.
Sure.
And I just want to know what your thoughts are on them. The two in particular that I'm looking at are Server Plus and Cloud Plus. The only reason I'm looking into those in particular is because I'm going into cybersecurity, and those areas kind of seem to have are piquing my interest a little bit. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are on those certifications, particulars, and see what kind of value they have in the industry.
So what type of certifications and experience do you have currently?
Right now, I'm getting my master's in cybersecurity.
Nice.
I have one more semester for that, and I currently have Security Plus and A Plus right now, and working towards Network Plus at the moment. Okay, good. That's a nice mix to have. Especially, do you have a job that is in IT now, or is this something? Is the schooling something you're doing full time? The school I'm doing full time.
Okay.
Currently, I'm unemployed, but I'm looking for employment, of course.
Okay, so you've already got a pretty good mix there. If you walked in the door with a master's in cybersecurity and you have A plus Network Plus and Security Plus wrapped up on a resume, you've got a really nice mix already. You've got a very solid entry-level position waiting for you with opportunity to move into security here in the future so that you can take advantage of all of these things that you learned when you got your master's. That's a nice place to be. Anything you added to this mix, you've got now at least some flexibility because you could add to the mix additional things like Server Plus, like Cloud Plus, that's going to give you knowledge that you don't have from A plus Network Plus and Security Plus, but you also have to be very careful about presenting too much to an employer when you don't quite have that entry-level position yet. So it's not like you can't use those. You may be putting in your resume with a cloud service provider, and if you have your Cloud Plus, you can present that. But maybe you don't tell them about your Server Plus. Or if you do, you put it later on somewhere down the resume so that you don't overqualify yourself and they don't think, oh, you did Server Plus, then you're going to want to be a Linux administrator. Like, no, I have no interest in being a Linux administrator. But you got your Server Plus. Clearly you're interested in being Linux. Let's get you over this Linux administrator job. And then you end up, the employer becomes confused about what you want to do. I think the industry is pretty clear that A plus Network Plus and Security Plus is kind of the beginning steps to learn technology in general. When you go outside that scope and you were to go to get a Microsoft certification, a Red Hat certification, and a Cisco certification, they would have no idea what you wanted to do. You kind of have to focus the people hiring you. You have to focus them in on what you're trying to do. I made this mistake with some of my resumes because at one point I had network management on my resume, I had security on my resume, I wrote a book about Nmap. I presented all of this to an employer and they're like, I don't know what you want. Oh, and had management experience. They're like, wait, you have management experience. Why would I hire you for this technical job? That's when I realized I should have just never had the management job on the resume. It should have been down at the bottom in a very small typeface. So we never talk about that because I was applying for a job as a systems engineer. Then I have to redirect the entire time, systems engineer. No, I really am smart. Just because I was a manager doesn't mean I was a complete moron. I really do know smart things. Look how smart I am. Let me tell you about smart things. And it becomes ridiculous. You become having to tap dance around just because you sort of spread this cornucopia of things in front of them and now they don't know what you want to do. So you do have to be a little bit careful, especially if you haven't gotten into the industry yet, about what you're planning to do. Now that said, there may be technologies you learn with Cloud Plus or things you learn in Server Plus that might help you in your career going forward, and it may be technologies you're generally interested in, and there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't go get those certifications if for that alone, every time you take a cert and you pass that certification, you're learning something, and there's a good thing to do with that. You just have to be very careful about how you present that for an employer, especially one that just wants to put you at a help desk and get you in the door that might eventually move you up. And with a master's in cybersecurity, there might be a security operations center job, which is a little bit higher up than a generalized help desk, but it's sort of the security help desk job. Maybe you get to start there, but if you're talking all about servers and clouds, they may think that that's not what you want to do. So be very careful about where you go with that. Probably more careful about what you tell the employer rather than whether you go get those certifications or not. Your goal, of course, is to get that job or get that better job, and you need to understand what the employer is asking for before you start just adding a bunch of certifications to your name and your title. That's going to be probably the key piece of this. Once you get the first job, then you can start branching out and going in different directions and kind of narrowing focus because you're already working for somebody and they know you would work good with the network team or they know you would work good with the security team. That's not as big of a problem. But when you're going in front of a person who's never met you before, they know nothing about your background and know nothing about your interests, it becomes a much more of a challenge. So don't get trapped into filling your resume with a bunch of certifications thinking it's going to make you look smarter when in reality it's simply muddying the water.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful.
Best of luck, Harold. I think either way you go, I think you're in great shape. keep doing what you're doing. I think you're going to be just fine.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks for calling. It becomes a little bit more of a challenge when that first job is it's this awkward time where you have to figure out the best way to do it. There does need to be a strategy, and it needs to be a very measured, specific, laser-focused strategy. I used to think you take everything you possibly know and you stick it on the resume and you tell them, look how smart I am. That's not what they want at all. They want to hire the perfect person for the job that they have on their list. They already have a list of things they want you to know. That's what your resume should show. Do you know more things? Yes, you do. Does the employer care? No, they do not. They want you to do these things, and then they will pay you for doing those things. And then later on, you can do other things. That's how it works. Every time, it seems. Let's go to 646. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Let's go to 646. Caller, what's your
Thanks.
name?
Hello. Thanks for listening. You may want to listen into the phone, not the stream. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from New York. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I had a question. This is the second time I'm calling. I called a while ago complaining about the fact that I froze during an interview, and you had incredibly uplifting advice that helped me to land my now current job. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I have a question about Microsoft feeding out the MCSA and MCSE program. At the end of the day, the server infrastructure, the enterprise infrastructure still uses Windows. So this is where the benchmark for literally evaluating a candidate as they come into a sysadmin role. Now, you look on the site, they say they're going to phase it this next year, or this year is the last for MCSA and MCSE. Windows is still from the primary kind of desktop operating system. Do you have any idea as to what was Microsoft thinking, what is going on in their head? Because not everybody's going to use Microsoft Azure at the end of the day. No, you don't. A regular person doesn't use Azure. So what is happening on that front is still, if I went and got MCSA today and then went for MCSE, am I done for? Is it a mistake? Why not? I still love that certification.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten it, but yeah.
I get it.
That was my question.
For those folks that haven't been watching this as it's been playing out, it was about a year ago, maybe shorter than that, where Microsoft revamped effectively their entire certification program and changed the focus so that Azure and cloud computing was really the focus of their certification programs. Just as you mentioned, Christian, it was a complete revamping that most specifically phased out that Microsoft MCSA/MCSE, those characters, those terms, the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, that was sort of the pinnacle of Microsoft knowledge, and it's the abbreviations and the certifications that all of the employers were looking for up to that point. For those that really go back in time over this, they used to have the MCSE, then they got rid of it, then they brought it back. Now they're getting rid of it again effectively. That's not entirely true, but that's effectively what they're doing. And they've changed the focus to be cloud. Is it from Microsoft's perspective, the future of Microsoft is the cloud. Therefore, from Microsoft's perspective, the future of their certifications needs to be the cloud. Are there still certifications in their list of things that talk about Windows and Windows technologies? Yes, there is. There are some entry-level certifications that they have that talk about individual products that you can get. The Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Windows 10, the Microsoft this and the Microsoft that. But if you go to their administrator certifications, it's about Azure Fundamentals. It's about Azure Administrator Associate. It's about DevOps. It's all about Microsoft 365, which is in the cloud. That's what they are pushing. In many ways, it feels like the tail's wagging the dog just a little bit. Microsoft, I think, is trying to push everybody down the road of Azure and cloud technologies so that they can then sell more Azure and cloud technologies. And they're not entirely wrong. That is certainly a major focus of where the industry is going. But to your point, we still got a lot of people running Windows that need to deploy Windows. They need to manage Windows. They need to secure Windows. And the certifications that they're now offering from Microsoft are sort of the entry-level certifications. They're not really offering or planning to offer the very high-end Microsoft Windows certifications or even Windows Server certifications any longer. It's more of Azure. It used to be when you're getting Microsoft certifications, you're working towards the Windows Server certs. That's what everybody was sort of pushing for. Those were the big money certs. Those were the ones people were getting hired for having. Now it's a very different perspective. To your question, what is Microsoft thinking? I don't know. The best I can come up with is, they got the new CEO. They're changing their focus. They're changing what they want to be as a company. I think they would like to be less known as an operating system company and more known for being a cloud computing company. And I think that's driving it too. I unfortunately feel that they are driving the company, or they're driving the certification of the company more along the lines of how can we make this match what we are doing. And I think that's maybe different than what the rest of the industry is trying to do. We're down here still trying to get Windows to work. How do I deploy Windows? How do I use these tools to deploy Windows and do these things? It's kind of hard to do that when they don't give you a way to do that. So that's sort of the challenge. We kind of have to go with it. Microsoft was going to make all these changes and decided not to make the changes. They pushed it out because of all of the COVID changes. They put on more delays, but all these things are going away. They will be retiring these things. It's now the point of what we're doing is figuring out, is this worthwhile to do a Microsoft certification now? Are people hiring us going to want to have a Microsoft certification? We're just going to have to see on that one. There's certainly a need for DevOps. There's certainly a need for people to get certified for Azure. And there's certainly a need to have people familiar with Microsoft 365. But is it going to be worthwhile for somebody who needs a job? Because a lot of us get certifications so that we can get a job or get a better job. And it's now we're just going to have to watch. What are employers asking for? What certifications would they like us to have? Are we starting to see more job openings come up? And in the job description, it has in there Azure. It has their Office 365 or Microsoft 365. Is there more of that or is there not more of that? We don't know yet. And will Microsoft change all of this again in 2 years? We don't know that either. We're just going to have to kind of hang on for this ride and see if their risk, their changes they're putting into this, and the way that they're hoping to move the industry by changing certifications, we're going to see if it really moves anything. It took years for people to remove the MCSE from job postings after Microsoft got rid of it. People were still asking for it even though it didn't exist anymore. We'll see if that happens or continues to happen this time. I have no idea if that's really going to happen. All of this, by the way, happened prior to the pandemic. It's not something that happened because of it. But now we get to see if it really does make a difference in what they plan to do. I don't have a good answer for you other than I am just as stymied as you are at the dramatic change that they made. And I'm hoping that they will kind of come off of this a little bit and go back to a little bit of Windows, but it may be that those days are over. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the call. It's one that I have looked at. I go out to the Microsoft site. I try to make sense of what's there. They've moved everything to their Microsoft Learn platform, so it's not even on the same web pages anymore. It's a little bit disjointed. You're not exactly sure where to go or what to do. If you're somebody who says, I just want to get a certification in Windows 10, it's certainly not obvious from here. They kind of hide the entry-level certs on here. They kind of focus more on, in fact, the first thing on Microsoft certifications, developer. What? Huh? What happened? What happened, Microsoft? what happened to MCSE and knowing Windows, and it was a platform and everything's on the Windows, and we could now the first thing on the list is developer. Now I'm not really sure what to think of that, and the rest of aren't either. We're just not sure with these. There are other things on there: an AI engineer, a data scientist, security engineer, DevOps, and they have other things on here, of course. But that's questions. We have many questions that come from this. I don't know that I have answers. I just have more questions from it. Not really sure. We'll have to see. But boy, what a good question. Thank you for calling and asking that, because I'm not sure either. And I'm watching it and I'm waiting to see. As somebody who makes certification courses, I could not imagine if I had had this large group of Microsoft certifications that I had created, and then one day Microsoft just sort of did away with those. I would not even know what to do with myself. It's the fear. That's what keeps me up at night, by the way. I wake up in the morning and CompTIA says, we're just getting out of the cert business. Like, okay, I got to go work on some other things now. Some people in the chat room even mentioning this. Am I planning to do a CCNA course? I have a huge list of things that I want to do next. And that's absolutely on the list. There's many things on this list. There's more things on my list that I will ever be able to get to in my lifetime, which people tell me is a good thing. You're supposed to have a list that is that big for the type of things that I'm trying to do with this. But I'm also running into the situation where that list keeps moving. Every day, every week, what's at the top of the list keeps changing. So I get feedback from you. I do tons of research. I look at Google Trends. I look at what people are talking about on the internets. I go into Reddit and see what people are talking about. What do they like? What do they not like? What are they working on? I look to see what trends are happening in the industry, what trends are happening with people like Microsoft changing their certifications around. And you can imagine when Microsoft made their big change, my list changed dramatically of where I wanted to go next with this. So that's one that it's a constant challenge for me too, to figure out what to do next because of the constantly changing platform, what's happening out there. And there's also things that I think would work well. I have a background in networking, a background in security. So those are in my wheelhouse. Background in operating systems, background in network operating systems, the cloud computing that I've done. So there's things I could go anywhere with this. Now I just have to figure out and focus and do. So the answer to your question of, am I planning to do a CCNA course? I'm planning to do a lot of things. Will I be able to do all of those things? No way. We'll just have to wait and see. Right now, the CompTIA has just released their new set of exam objectives for the Security Plus. So later this year, there will be a new Security Plus test. There will be new Security Plus videos from me. So I'm working on those right now. And that'll probably take months to create. It's going to take months for books to come out, months for other training materials to be available. That's just the natural progression. But as soon as that's done, now what do we do? That's the real question. And I don't have an answer for you yet, because by the time we get to that point, the list will have moved around again. That's just the way this works. That's the nature of the beast and the story of my life and the way it works here. But that's a good thing, I guess. It's good to have options. It's good to at least be able to know that you could go any direction. And if I do wake up tomorrow and A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus are gone, I got plenty of things to work on and plenty of things that you folks are going to want to know about. So you haven't gotten rid of me yet. There's plenty for me to do until you're just sick of it. And I'll just keep doing it. We'll just keep going and going and going and going as long as it takes. Other things in the chat room. Yes, the current existing Security Plus will continue to be an exam until July of next year. You've got a year before that one goes away. And I think most people will continue to take that one. I put a video out last week that said, or a week before, that said, do not wait for the newest Security Plus. Take the current version. And I explain why in that video. And that's probably going to be the same once it comes out. Like, don't wait. Don't take that new one. Take the old one. And I explain why in the video, why that's a good idea. Very good one. Is the CompTIA Linux Plus cert a good certification to pursue? You know, CompTIA brought in the Linux Plus internal. They used to use a third party's certification as that. Now they do it themselves, which I think makes it a little bit of a more focused certification. It's not the number one Linux certification in the industry. I think Red Hat pretty much has the one that most employers are looking for. So I guess it just depends on what you want to do with Linux. Are you just trying to learn it? Do you just want to get a little bit of Linux on the list of things that you're familiar with? Or have you really decided, I want to be a Linux administrator? And that might make a different choice for you. You might choose to get the Red Hat instead of the Linux Plus. Or maybe the Linux Plus makes more sense because the Red Hat is that's a tough exam or set of exams. So maybe the single Linux Plus exam fits best into what you're trying to do with your career right now. It's one of those same questions you always get on, do I take Network Plus or do I take CCNA? Those are two very, very different things. You have to figure out what you want to do and then pick the right certification for where you're going with that. So you get to choose between those two. There's differences and good things on both sides. It's really about what you're trying to do and what employers want to see from you and handle those pieces of it. And that's where I think I would go with as well. So if you're ever trying to get to a point where do I take this or do I take that? You really have to take into account all of those different things. And if you've done your homework and you know in your particular geography where you live or the places you want to work, because now it's not about just your geography. It could just be about what company you want to work for. And you've gone out to their website. You know what job postings are available. You know what they're looking for in those job postings. And you know which ones fit you the most. And you can see where your gaps are. You want to fill the gaps. And if the gaps in that list are Linux Plus, go fill in the Linux Plus gap. If that gap is a Red Hat, go fill it in with the Red Hat. If that gap is Security Plus, go fill in with Security. If that gap is CCNA, fill it in with CCNA. So it changes depending on what you're trying to do. There's no single path in IT. There's no single set of stones you step through. It's a branching that you could go anywhere at any time and do anything with the skill sets that you've acquired along the way. It's up to you to really find the best fit for those so that both you and the employer are having a match made in heaven so that you've got the best job. They're able to give you the best job, and then you get to go from there. You just never know what's going to happen. It's a perfect place to be, isn't it? There's no downside there. Just decide what you want to do and go do that. That's the benefit of IT, and that's the reason I keep doing this. Well, thank you for joining me. Thanks for being here on the after show and asking the questions in the chat room. Thanks for being here in the first hour. Remember that the replay of this is available immediately afterwards on the YouTube. You can watch it from the very beginning and just enjoy the time that we've had together all over again. Don't forget about checking our live event calendar. On professormesser.com/calendar, you'll know exactly when the next event is going to be. We'd love to have you come back next week for our Security Plus, our Network Plus study group, and the week after that for Security Plus study group. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.